And that's what happened last night.
The police kicked in the door, shot him twice in the chest, and died.
Before you knew it, we had 500 families. We had over 100 volunteers calling us. We were on the phone constantly.
I can't get, and I got one police department telling me they don't know who's in charge. I got another police department here. Everybody's got a gun, and nobody knows who's in charge. Did anybody figure out who's in charge yet? Is there anybody in charge here? Any police officer in charge? Are you in charge? I can't find anybody in charge. That's the problem.
All right. Thank you, and welcome to Revolution Radio Live at the Olive Press Eatery in Metuchen. Hey, everybody. Woo! All right. We should probably have somebody check on the stream on YouTube and make sure our audio is coming through, because that might have been silence for our live audience, for all I know. I want to thank, I got to admit, like, getting ready for this this live event, I was really rusty. If I got to be perfectly honest with you, look, it's been probably about 2 years since I've organized a live event. And I think for our first time back, this was really, really great. So thanks everybody for turning out. There's traffic and there's rain, and this is New Jersey, and this place it kind of sucks. But but a lot of people made it here on time, especially our panelists. And our first panel, I'm not going to spend a lot of time goofing around because we have 3 panels tonight, plus the IDAVOX Report. And that's really what tonight's show is about. And that's what Revolution Radio is about. We are not just a podcast, and there's plenty of single person podcasts out there, and they do a lot of good. I think there's a lot of advantages to using this medium to support revolutionary activity. But this isn't just a podcast. It's meant to be an organizing vehicle. And the opportunity to come here to Metuchen and meet with comrades who are working in social justice circles and bringing people together is just as much a part of it as it is talking about revolutionary activity, supporting education, supporting the liberation of the Palestinian people, or critiquing the American political system, which are the 3 panels we're going to have tonight. And then we're going to get to our comrade, Daryle Lamont Jenkins, and the IDAVOX Report. Over here, give me a hand, please. Since coming to Revolution Radio, the network has more than doubled in size and strength, and I got to thank Daryle.
That fat joke man.
No. Absolutely no. Our reach, the audience that we're getting, and the people that are coming to participate in our shows and stuff, it just keeps going up. And so Daryle, we leveled up when we got Daryle and we got involved with One People's Project. So thanks a lot, man. I appreciate all your contributions. And if you paid attention over the last at least year and a half or so, Christian Perez just keeps bringing a larger and larger presence to Revolution Radio. He's smart in a lot of different ways. I call him the professor, not just because he is a professor, but because I look to him for kind of that revolutionary theory. Because without revolutionary theory, there can be no revolution. And not only is he himself smart, his work in academic circles has brought in other talent to Revolution Radio. So. That's all I got to say. Make sure, again, if you're watching this now or if you're here live in our studio audience, please share this out. It's going to be a fun couple of hours. And if you get a chance, please donate. I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about our editorial board and how maybe at our next event you could wind up here or hosting an event or doing your own segment on NJR Live or something like that. But I'm going to get into that a little bit later. Right now, I'm going to hand it off to my comrade and the professor, Christian Perez.
Thank you, Brian. I guess everybody can hear me. So I'm Christian Perez. I'm going to be leading this panel discussion today on education. I got a couple different guests. First, I have Mediha here. How you doing, Mediha?
Good. How are you?
Doing okay. Thank you so much. Also, I want to say thank you to the Olive Press Eatery. Best French fries I've had in a while. Like, I wasn't even expecting those French fries to be that good. They were awesome. I didn't even need ketchup. It was great. But I just want to say thanks again for having us here. It's great. Revolution Radio always looking to grow. But so let's get into it. Education. We got a couple guests here. We've got Medea, who I've already introduced. We also have online. We have Jennifer Lewinsky, and we have is it just Lark now? Lark, how are you doing?
Tika Lark.
Tika Lark, how are we doing, Tika? Good. Good. So let's start off talking about education. I mean, education for me, it's something that I'd like to think I've devoted myself to. I've worked with every age group. Kindergarten, I was a one-on-one paraprofessional for a 5-year-old boy with autism, and that changed my life. I taught 6th grade for a year. I was a middle school Spanish teacher, so after doing that, I have absolutely no fear of anything on planet Earth. And now I teach at the local community college. I lecture on the danger of conspiracy theories. So that's a little bit about me. That's my background. That's why I'm here on this panel. But my first question, I'm actually going to go to our comrades online. The first person I want to present a question to is Jennifer. Jennifer, you are a mother. You're an activist in New Jersey. What would you say is one of or some of the more pressing issues in education today?
Okay. I think the most pressing issue in education is that we're still teaching to get a job, right? So they're getting educated to be employed, not getting educated so that they know things, so that they have the ability for critical thinking or to continue to educate themselves. They're educating themselves so that they can sit still for 8 hours and work for something. And that's a huge problem. There's no free play. There's no, we don't get educated about our environment. We don't go outside in any real way. We don't know what's going on in other countries, right? So our education system is one that is failing to teach holistically. And that's the biggest problem. Keep in mind, I'm an abolitionist, and education is a system that I believe is oppressive. So,
No, definitely.
so
I mean,
there's that.
yeah, go ahead. Tika, Lark, can I ask you the same question? What in your opinion would be one of the more pressing issues in education today?
For me, one of the most pressing issues is anti-Blackness within education. The whole, system is, I don't want to say the thing is that it's created to break Black children, specifically. And I've been, I was a teacher for 10 years, and I'm, still involved in creating curriculum. I'm still involved in early childhood education. And the thing is, the reason why they're able to do this to Black children in regards to feeding them, in some places where they allow for corporal punishment in school, Black children are up to 500% more likely to be beaten in school. 500% more likely than white children. You also have, kindergarten, preschool, Black girls are actually, have the highest rate of suspension. And just generally, the thing is that you have a dehumanization of Black adults. And you can only be a child in the eyes of this system if you're a human being. So people always kind of ask, well, what age does the racism start? Well, it starts when you're born and you get into an institution. So, and I think that's, pushing back against that idea has been what has been causing people a lot of issues. Well, racist white people, to be clear.
In this specific moment in time.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, for me, as a man of color in America, I know that I noticed race, if you want to call it that, at a very young age. Playing with my best friend at like 3 or 4 years old. But that's nothing. I've heard that students are going to children will notice these color differences even younger. I've heard, I'm not an expert, but I've heard experts say that almost in infancy, obviously not newborns, but children younger than a year old are very much aware of differences in appearance and what we would call race. But next I want to go to Mediha. Mediha, I mean, you've worked with some college students, right? That you said in the past, we were having a chat earlier, you said that you had worked at Rutgers, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, we're handing it back and forth. What were some of the frustrations or can you speak to some of the frustrations you might have felt dealing with older students? Because you were telling us that you're definitely having some. We'll just go with frustrations with older students. Can you speak to some of those frustrations?
Yeah, I felt that like a lot of the students weren't engaged as much anymore at that age. Yeah, they're in class and they're studying for a specific degree, and I was one of the teachers specializing in it. But they just felt they already knew everything. They weren't engaged. They were kind of disrespectful back to me. So as I was teaching, I actually had like 12 students in my class, and 3 of them had asked me, "Why are we learning this?" And they would challenge me, which was, it's fine to challenge the teacher, but to the point where they were just like, this isn't for us. We're not, they're just going through the motions and trying to get an easy A, like, but they're not engaging themselves.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that speaks to a frustration. I mean, dealing with unmotivated students is definitely a big problem in education. Jennifer, can I take it back to you? I mean, as a parent, I think you have, I think, some younger kids. I think you might have some kids in high school. What are some ways you think we could, maybe help to motivate students, to care about their education more?
Just to say, my kids are old.
Oh, sorry.
My oldest actually is an educator. He is 29.
Sorry.
That's okay. My youngest is 23. And she completely disengaged from education. My 2 older both went to college. He studied poli-sci. My son wanted to be, he wanted to write education policy, right? Because he was so outraged when he got to college and found out all the stuff that he never learned in school. And he was really angry about it, like really angry, right? So, I mean, obviously my kids are activists, as you know, right? So they are very much like their mama. And they never really were engaged in their education, but there was a lot of different things that were involved in that. And a large part of that was the fact that schools are segregated. So my 3 Black kids were the only 3 Black kids in their school.
What district was that?
I'm sorry?
What district was that?
Avon.
Okay, yeah, that says a lot.
Like the alternative was Asbury Park, right? Asbury Park in the 90s, I don't know if you know, and I was young and I was like, yeah, I'm not leaving my kids there. I just, I definitely went back and forth about, supporting my local school system or making sure that my kids got the safest and best education possible, which I'm still not even sure that I made the right decision, right? Because I sent them to an all-white school where they basically learned that they were inferior and that they would be fetishized and that they were outcasted and all of these different things, right? So they came out with all of this anxiety that was also perpetuated by teachers, right? So like the teachers would say, your uncle pays a lot of money for your tuition to come here and you should really just appreciate what you're getting. I don't think you know how good this is for you. And a lot of that stuff really stuck with them, right? So they got all of this white supremacist sort of bashing all the way through 8th grade. And then went to Neptune High School and went into this culture shock. 2 of them thrived and were like, yay, people that are normal. And then my daughter was like, okay, yeah, I don't even know how to work this. And she just checked out and completely disengaged. So there's really no, in a segregated school system, I don't feel like there's really a great way to engage Black kids in education. I think that it just needs to be, and I will never say reform because I don't think that reform is the thing. I think that it needs to be done over. It needs to be done over from the bottom up because it's trash right now. It's just nothing is working.
Unfortunately, I see reform, I mean, I'm in favor of reform, but it's an empty word, right? Because everybody's talking about reform. It's not about reform in general, it's about who's doing the reforming. And reform can definitely be a Trojan horse at times, and we see it all over the country. As a note, I was having a conversation earlier today, and I believe Monmouth County is about 83% white. So that's where I'm from. I'm a Long Branch boy. Jennifer went to Asbury, but once you leave Asbury,
I went to Long Branch.
Oh, you went to Long Branch too? That's right, we had this conversation. Go Green Wave. But but once you leave Long Branch, Asbury, Neptune, you really leave like the diverse part of Monmouth County. And for someone like me, who's very thankful to grow up in a multicultural neighborhood, to have that background, it really is a culture shock when you just leave Long Branch. And I moved to Tinton Falls, and I'm right on the border of Colts Neck, and I might as well be in Pennsylvania at times. But that's Monmouth County. So next, I just want to ask the same question to Tika. What are some ways we can engage students? What do you think?
Well, I think that, that's a challenging thing because we have this deficit model where we feel, we're often kind of wondering, well, the reason why we're not engaging students is because they have a deficit. So that's a challenge. We need to kind of change how we're thinking about that. I just want to go back to when you were asking about children and racism. Infants as young as 3 to 6 months old can verbally categorize people according to racial characteristics. And children as young as 2 can use those categories to reason about people's behavior. So it starts pretty young. I think another thing, kind of going back to your question, is, supporting teachers, supporting Black teachers, like the presence of Black people in white spaces is seen as a threat for just being Black. So, it's kind of like the violence on Black children is also put on Black teachers and Black administrators, and that's from Glasdale in 2020. And I think that's another challenge. Me as a Black teacher, I was very much treated very poorly by the administration. Because I did not, the thing is that your role as a teacher is to break Black children, and your role as a Black teacher is also to break Black children. So if you do not act in that, in a manner that is, violent, you have consequences. You will be pushed out of the field. They use Black teachers as, they try to force you into being a cop. This whole idea, and I view education, I view K-12 as the police of women land. Essentially the same thing that men do in the police, that happens within the teaching field, in regards to how people interact with Black children and kind of upholding this white supremacy. And the reason I bring that up, I keep bringing up Black children, is because in, number one, the United States and metro areas, we are the most hyper-segregated in regards to facts, in regards to, suspension, in regards to just how they're doing in school. Black children are often or actually, usually, if we're ranking people at the bottom, most oppressed, if you skip over Black people in regards to our Black children, you're never going to, you almost have to start there, because if you can't fix that, you're not going to fix the system. You essentially have to, dismantle it and rebuild it, as Jennifer was saying. There's really, and it goes from preschool all the way up through higher ed. I cannot say that I had any good experiences in formal education. High school was horrible. College was horrible. Grad school was horrible. I have to deal with, and the thing is that I'm using personal anecdotal stories, but I am sure that this is, something that is a typical experience. You can look it up. And the thing is that, a lot of times people want to try to say, oh, it's in regards to not having, is it a deficit? Kind of like, oh, that's because, they don't have money, or they don't have two parents, and they don't have blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, as a person who had two parents who were college educated, it didn't matter. They were still awful to me. So it's, I think, but this is, like I said, this is personal anecdotal, but this is all stuff that you can look up. It's all researchable facts.
Yeah.
So, dismantle it and then rebuild it, in a way that's in a liberatory fashion.
Yeah. I mean, I just
I
piggyback.
had white college educated parents, and that still wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, I think, the unfortunate reality of the United States sometimes is, even when you account for class, even if you have wealthy, highly educated Black people, second generation of wealth, second generation educated, unfortunately, oftentimes they could still come face to face with racism and not, succeed in the way we would say professionally. A college education, being born wealthy, does not guarantee a good life if you are Black in America. Really quick, I just want to say that if you are following along online, feel free to comment. We always love feedback. We love to be interactive. If you want to add to it, if you want to say something, go ahead. Feel free to ask us a question. Go ahead and comment on the stream. You can comment on YouTube. You can comment on Facebook. You can do it in all those places. But really quick, I mean, Tika touched on a point saying that how, as a Black teacher, she feels like she ends up having to police Black children. And unfortunately, that's what oppressive systems do, right? We could read a book from 2 or 3 generations ago by the great George Orwell, Shooting an Elephant. He talks about, just by virtue of being a soldier in the British Empire, he was expected to fill out a particular role, and that role meant, helping to oppress the local population in Burma. But yeah, I mean, for those of you that are fans, I'm the teacher, so George Orwell did away with Stalinism, fascism, and colonialism in one lifetime, one man. Definitely had some flaws, but read Homage to Catalonia. It's my favorite book. But again, please comment on the stream. But next, I want to take it to Mediha. Like you had said that you had worked with older students. So unfortunately, when I asked Tika and I asked Jennifer, they're talking about frustrations that exist in public education, K to 12, and now you're dealing with students as they're in college. Now, you talked about just dealing with resistance from students, and it's not the fun resistance, not the question authority resistance, stand up to the oppressor resistance. It was more of like, I'm going to ask you to elaborate it, but what do you think it was coming from? Why do you think that they were resisting you?
I think one of the reasons was I was around their age, so for that, maybe they saw me more as a peer than an educator. But also, I think the attention spans have been affected because of social media and things like this, and everybody is able to do things in small chunks. But because of the rise of the internet and everything, and you can find out information online and all of this stuff, information is easily accessible. So people aren't really going to pay attention in class because they can just Google it later. And so they're just not engaged in that sense anymore. But I think another part of that is also like a lot of kids in this area, especially, you have to have kind of like a 2-income household to make it. And it's like you're in a factory, like you have the children, but you send the children off somewhere else and someone else deals with them, but you don't really have time to engage with what's going on with your children because you gotta work all the time, and then the kids are just on their own a lot of the times. And this kind of like stresses the family structure, but also their own development. And then you can get by with very little now. Like you can Google an image and you can hand that in as the assignment. Like nobody has the time to check and recheck and all that kind of stuff anymore.
I mean, education, it's definitely a lot of work, and I think I think a lot of young people today, unfortunately, I think we're just pushing them into higher education without really a plan. I think college is great. I think furthering our education in any way, shape, or form is great. But one of my big problems, one of my frustrations with leaving public education was the fact that I had a master's degree. I had all this experience, and I couldn't get a job for more than $19,000. So I'm pulling my hair out. I'm trying to go alternate route. And I felt like no matter what I do, I couldn't succeed. Now, just going back, now, Tika had made a comment before about, teachers being in certain situations with their students having to act as cop. Now, I'm not going to say I felt like I was in that position, but similarly, there I was at the Alternative Academy in Long Branch, the Challenge and Achievement Program. These are children with authority issues. These are children with behavioral issues. Tiny classrooms, of course, unfortunately, the majority of them are children of color, which is frustrating also. Most of them Latino, like me, I'm Puerto Rican, I'm the last Puerto Rican in Long Branch. But I remember teaching them history, and I didn't have the curriculum, right? I'm walking in, and I start off, all right, we'll start off with Latin American history. We'll start off with pre-Columbian Latin American history. And that was the day that the person who walks around with the clipboard, the administrator, the education, the name is the curriculum for history. The curriculum admin for history came in, and then she specifically told me that they're not teaching that to the kids this year. Right? I'm like, you're in a district, Long Branch, which is probably like the last concentration of Latinos in the county, a district that's 60% Latino, and we're not teaching them that history. I mean, and for me, I mean, it was just incredibly frustrating. So education, you have people that go to school to be teachers, to go to school to get a job, to become professionals, and then that responsibility is just taken away from them. And unfortunately, that's a problem we have to overcome in American education. But I just kind of rambled for a second there. But I want to go back to Jennifer really quick. We are running out of time. But Jennifer, what was it like as a parent dealing with teachers? Were teachers that you felt, were they receptive to your input? Were they standoffish or combative? What was it like dealing with teachers and administrators, as a mother?
I will say that we were in a relatively unique situation, right? So I had my first kid when I was 16, my second one when I was 18, and my third one when I was 21. We lived in Avalon at the time, and we were the only Black people there. And I was the stereotype of a young single mother, right, with two baby daddies. So I walked into the room with that. And in my 20s, and I will say that I was defensive because I knew that I was walking into the room with that, and how are they looking at me, and how do they talk about me when I leave, and I know some of the conversations that go on about me in this very small town. I definitely had almost every interaction I've had with teachers as far as my children are concerned have been confrontational. My youngest is trans and was well on her way to transition by the time she was 8 or 9 years old. My oldest, they tried to put him in special education and put him in private track, and it wasn't having that because there's nothing wrong with him. My middle daughter, who is brilliant, was really friends with the teacher. She had a hard time making friends, so I didn't have a really hard time with her. I did get a music teacher fired from Avalon for throwing a folder at my kid.
Good.
And I just, why was it my kid that it was okay to throw something at somebody's kid? And she was like, you don't know what it's like being in a room with 9-year-olds. You know what? I don't, because I don't have the temperament for it. So I knew better than to go into a room full of 9-year-olds. And if you don't have the temperament for it, then you need to find your happiness elsewhere. Because next time it will not be a conversation. And I fought administrators all the way through with my daughter, who is trans, and they told me that she's creating her own problems. And if she would just dress like a boy, then she would have these problems. And they can't help me with what people say because that's not. It's not actual danger.
Just be someone else. Just be someone else.
Twice. Just to say, I had a really hard time advocating for them. I mean, really, really hard time advocating for them. And because of that, I still am involved with school systems, right? I know what's going on with the Neptune Board of School Board and Asbury School Board, and I try to stay on top of things. Long Branch actually has a better education system than most around here, and it's still super messy. So it's hard to stay out of once you've been in it, because advocating for kids, especially kids of color, is especially Black kids and kids of color, is really, really difficult.
Yeah.
It's,
All right, Tika, I got one more question for you. What's some advice you can give to Black teachers or young Black people who want to be teachers? What's some advice you can give them? Because I'll tell you what. I'll just let you answer the question. No caveat. What's some advice you give some Black teachers?
First off, I want to address Jennifer. First off, I'm sorry that happened to you. I want to acknowledge that did happen. Not saying you said, oh, I was a young mother and I should have been nicer. No, that's bullshit. I will tell you this because when I was a teacher, and this is in Los Angeles, I was a teacher and I had a young Black mother in my class. And she was unhappy for good reasons. Just like you said, they were talking about you, and you could feel that. You were right. They were talking about you. You were absolutely correct. And what happened was, she said, her and her baby mama. This is a white woman principal. She said all these comments and said, she probably doesn't even know how to read, etc. This is before the IEP meeting. This is what she said. And I said, you can't talk about her like that. And she told me I was probably an affirmative action hire, so I could be quiet. So just so you know, you have every right to assume that that's happening. You have every right to be upset because I taught in some of the wealthiest school districts and I've taught in some of the poorest school districts. And I'll tell you that people with money, they will come as these teachers and guess what? They're like, what can I do? What can I do? I also want to, talk about being a professor and teaching, et cetera, et cetera. One thing that's really interesting that I got to watch during COVID is my husband. He is white. He is a second generation professor. And I see how respectful his students are to him. He can say literally anything. I mean, I want you two to know also that there are other issues. You say like, oh, well, people aren't listening to you. All the things. Now, if you're a white man, they know how to listen to you. Yeah. They know how to listen. They know how to act right. They know how to be respectful. Yeah. So if you think like inside your head, you're like, well, it's because of my gender, it's because of my race, it's because of my ethnicity, it's because of my religion. Yes, it absolutely is. Just so you know, it most absolutely is. I know people don't want to say these things. But I got to watch him. I was like, wow, I would never say. And he's just like, oh my God, I can't believe you're saying. I mean, and the thing is that they just laugh. I mean, these are like, white kids with money, like men with money, and they know how to be respectful. And he would come in and he would watch like how they would treat certain young professors. He's like, you can't talk to her that way. But the thing is that you shouldn't need a white man. It's true, because I advocate for you. So just so you know, that's happening in your head. If that's you were thinking that was happening, it definitely is. So what is my advice? My first advice to anybody who is not a white person teaching or who is not a white parent, and you suspect, well, what if I just did this better? All right, no, there's something you can do better. There's nothing you can do better. It's not you. That's the first thing you need to know. It's not you. It's the system. It's racist. It's sexist.
Underfunded.
It is, if you're, it's classist.
Yeah.
So it's all these things. So the first thing there's nothing wrong with me. It's them. That's going to be.
It's not me, it's you.
Advocating for yourself is knowing that it's not you.
Yeah.
And number two, the thing is that, pick your battles, build your friends, and, pick your battles and do your friends. Don't, sometimes I'm kind of like, I don't want to tell you to just give up or just mess around and come in a little fire. Just so you know. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, that, I never tell you what you need to do is this, that, and the other, and then you'll get fired, and then what, well, keep it real. Like, no, I'm not telling you to do that. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying, at least in your own head, no, and then make friends. Make friends and keep the door open for other people. Because guess what? They might not be able, you by yourself is not going to be able to do anything, but you always just like, let me get quiet, and I'm do whatever I can to let somebody else in the door. Let somebody else in the door. Because maybe if it's one of you, you can't do much. If it's two of you, if it's three of you, just quietly, that's what they try to get us to play these, I call it the Highlander games. Yeah. Where it's like, it can only be one. I am the only black person here. Yeah. I literally, like, if I'm on a show, if I'm on a big show, or if I'm doing like poetry readings or et cetera, whatever, I will always be like, here's my Chicano friend. If you're gonna have me in poetry, you're gonna have them too. If you're gonna have me, you're gonna have this other black person. I'm never gonna be like the only black person on a panel. Whoever you are, historically, whatever, you should never ever be the only one. You always have a friend. You always have a buddy. Make that a policy. Definitely. Come with somebody else. So
we got to work together. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of out of time here. I just want to say thank you to Jennifer and Tika. I mean, I guess 90 seconds. Medea, I just want one question. If you can give me 90 seconds. Any advice for young teachers of color?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar to what she just finished kind of saying, but I was going to say have a support system, because the institutions, they will sacrifice you, and if you just have a support system. It doesn't matter what they are. It could be your parents, could be your peers, whatever. Just have a system.
Thank you so much, Medea. I want to say thank you to Jennifer. I want to say thank you to Tika. Thank you to Medea. And thank you to our awesome crowd that showed up here today. I'm going to go ahead and hand it back off to Brian.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. How about it? Great education crowd. And Mark, and I got to, before Tika and Jennifer go, Tika supported Revolution Radio when it was New Jersey Revolution Radio. When it was just a podcast with me talking onto a cell phone in my car. She's a mentor of mine, and I owe her more than she'll ever know, not just in helping me believe that we could build something through media independently, but also, just kind of being there for me in some pretty low times. People that know me, you have your ups and downs in life. Everybody does, especially as an activist. And she's been there for me, even though she's not an activist. She's a writer, and make sure you get that right, sister? Thanks again for showing up, and we'll see you the next time. All right, thanks. One more hand for our education. Yay! So I'm going to ask the people on our Palestinian rights panel to come on up here, while I let people know at home a bit behind the scenes and why this event is really special for me. Is because I do get to celebrate, the accomplishment of forming our editorial board. So when I started out Revolution Radio, it was just me, and I've had some business partners and a lot of comrades help along the way. But a media company that can, counter the mainstream media's message, but still give credible journalism, is something that can't be accomplished in a small organization. It just can't. It's impossible. There's too much going on in our world. There's too much revolutionary activity. There's too much corruption. There's too much crime. There's too much of everything to try to do it in a small way. And that means I've needed a lot of help. So I started reaching out at the beginning of the year with people that have been involved with various projects over the years from as many different activist backgrounds as I could find. And we formed an editorial board. It's about 30-something members right now, and people donate money. Of course, the financial aspect can't be downplayed. Our writer in the back there, Leah, please give her a round of applause because she does more than right. She does more than right. She lends a lot of tech support, writing the banner ads, making sure that studios get set up and all that kind of stuff. So, and she's here tonight in the back. She's also got her resin creation. Your resin creations are here with us. So if you want to support a young student artist back there, She's got some pretty cool stuff. I like the cake knives, man. My wife is a baker, so she really dug the cake knives. But so this editorial board of ours supports us financially, allows us to pay staff, get out there, get some microphones. As you can see, we need more literature and more background because we don't have it. And also, I mean, they participate in creating media, and that's really where the organizing component of it comes into, because whoever you are and whatever your background, you can get involved with us. You can learn how to create your own productions. And I love Belisha Beacon out of Florida, who I know is watching on the stream right now, comes on once a month and does a movie review with us. And that came about because she became a member of our editorial board and saw a need in this platform for that. And I love doing it every month. She assigns me a movie to watch. It's a little bit like a homework assignment, but it also forces me to go in my bedroom, lock the door, get some popcorn, and watch a movie. So it's not all that bad, and it brings Revolution Radio to life. So if you get a chance while you're here in the audience tonight, Leah can help you sign up for our Revolution Radio editorial board in the back, right? She knows how to do it, right? Or if you're online, you can just go to www.njrevolutionradio.com. That's like New Journalism Revolution Radio, not like New Jersey. It used to be, but now it's New Journalism because we're a national network. But one more time, www.njrevolutionradio.com, and sign up to be an editorial board member or make a donation if you don't really want to get that involved. We will take your money either way. Appreciate it. So this next panel is an issue that's a very current one and one that it's really important that we addressed. Shanaz, thanks for having us in your establishment tonight. It's great to be here. She was on a couple of weeks ago, so we're certainly going to follow up on. But one thing that I've noticed, watching the mainstream media, there is always a qualifier, it seems, that you have to acknowledge Israel before you have any kind of discussion about what's going on in the Middle East. And every reporter and everything I've seen, they always have to first acknowledge Israel's right to exist. And we're not going to do that tonight. Look, people have a right to exist. Human beings have a right to exist. And a state is a construct of human beings. A support comes from both outside and inside. So the populace of the state has to support the state, but also outside states in an international relations standpoint have to accept the existence of a state. And when you have a state that continually violates international law, flaunts international law, tries to avoid it, you don't earn the respect and the recognition needed to be a legitimate state. I don't have an opinion of what the solution is here. I'm not Israeli and I'm not Jewish. I'm a white guy that's trying to put a panel together to give voice to people that have been silenced. And it's that simple for me. And I'm not going to qualify it or require anybody to come onto my programming and qualify it by recognizing something that a majority of people in the world would not see as legitimate if they were properly educated about what's going on over there. So that's what we're here to do tonight. And I want to really, really thank my panelists, Shanaz and Jessica. Thank you for being here tonight. Everybody, a round of applause for these amazing women. So Shanaz, you were on a couple of weeks ago. And Jessica, can you grab that microphone over there by the laptop? And you can close that laptop there. We're done. Thank you very much. We'll start off with Shanaz. We were on a couple of weeks ago, and I know there was a quote, air quotes for our podcast listeners, ceasefire recently. What's really going on since that ceasefire? Has it been a ceasefire?
I mean, there's never really a ceasefire, right? Sheikh Jarrah, they're still throwing stones in the homes. The settlers are throwing stones. They're destroying things. They keep the owners of their homes inside. They're not allowed to move, but the settlers are outside, and the Israeli army basically, or I don't want to call them army, they're actually the Israeli occupation forces are actually just keeping them at home and protecting settlers, because essentially what they want to do is, remove them from their homes and make it an all Jewish East and West Jerusalem. But in Gaza, I think it was several days ago, as soon as the new Prime Minister Bennett took over, he actually started bombing there too. There was nobody killed, but still, think about how they're killing the people. They're actually bombing agricultural areas, open agricultural areas where they plant and try to sustain themselves. They're bombing near schools. It's just terrible. And no, there is no such thing as a ceasefire there.
Thank you. I think, and what I think the ceasefire's real effect I've seen, at least through observing mainstream, is just silent as mainstream media. It really does get people by putting out a media show, you're getting people to kind of stop talking. And I think that's the point of doing this panel and continue to post on social media. And you've been really great at posting stuff on social media to keep people informed, because honestly, the pressure right now is to keep quiet. The pressure right now is to say, listen, it's a ceasefire, so just chill out because nothing bad is happening. But that's not the truth. Jessica, you've been involved in a lot of activist stuff. You visited Palestine. About how long ago were you there?
Roughly last year in January, before the pandemic hit. I was in Palestine. I visited a couple other countries, but that was one of my main goals, to go visit the West Bank and visit friends and people that I know that live there. And currently I'm even speaking with someone right now, how still right now they're having fire in Sheikh Jarrah. Gaza is still getting bombed, and it's currently, right now as we're speaking, they are confirming that they do have.
What was your impression when you were there? What did you think of Palestine?
So honestly, I entered through Tel Aviv. My experience was horrible. Like, not only because of the simple fact that it's like you get questioned left and right to see why are you entering Israel for. I was going from Greece to Israel. When I was in Greece, they have a whole complete lane separated for people who are going to Israel. And they have security there. So I had my tickets, and I'm going to go there because that's the airline that I'm supposed to go on. And they said, you're going the wrong lane. Where are you going? And I said to them, I'm going to Israel. And I had my hijab, my scarf, but fully covered. They asked me, why are you entering this airplane? What are you talking about? And I said, I was the only hijabi going on an airplane. And she could testify, everyone that goes to Israel, to Palestine, they have to enter through Jordan. Or if they're going through Egypt, to enter through land to go to West Bank. These are the only entry points that you could go into the West Bank. I was going straight head on with my daughter, and I was like, I don't care, let's see what's gonna happen. I got interviewed like I was gonna get a job offer or something like that, left and right, to see why am I entering and going through, why am I entering to Tel Aviv? Why didn't I buy my ticket to Jordan? I said, are you gonna pay my ticket to Jordan? I didn't care what I had to say. And then they noticed that my background, my mother is from the Jewish heritage, my last name. So they even asked me, where's your father? Where's your mother from? They completely wanted to interrogate me and go through all my baggage. Like, why am I coming into the country? After that whole interview, I entered, got off the airplane, and I'm not going to lie to you, I felt very, very uncomfortable in the airplane. I felt very uncomfortable because I was the odd person with my daughter on this airplane full of Israelis that are entering, or people who are going to Israel. As I got off, I got interrogated again, and needed to check my bags when I told them, you already checked them in Greece. And I said, well, what else is there you're gonna find inside my bags that's gonna be different? After that, one thing that's very different that they do, because there's many countries in the world that do not allow or do not recognize Israel as a country. They give you a visa in paper. They do not give you a visa. They do not stamp your passport. Because let's say if I want to go to Indonesia and they see my passport got stamped by the Israeli government, I won't be able to enter Indonesia. So, it's powerful, these like little things that make big impact to understand what is really the movement, how everyone is moving. After my little experience entering the country, I decided not to stay in the west side of Israel. I entered West Bank because I already had Airbnbs. It felt like, when I got on the taxi, he goes, where are you going, to the West Bank? Oh, no, I can't enter. And I said, you have to take the other taxi that has the other plates. So there's two plates. Yeah. There's a segregation that it is to understand that during this time that we're living in, there's segregation that is happening overseas on our tax dollars.
I wanted to, so this was just as a visitor. So I guess, Shanaz, you've been in contact with family members there and such. As a visitor, you can imagine it's only more and more amplified when you actually live there. What do Palestinian people do to cope? I mean, you have to have some sense of normalcy. People are raising families. They have to eat. They have to find places to have some kind of.
Poverty is a big thing.
When you're, what do they do to try to live normal lives in Palestine?
I mean, well, when you look at Palestine too, you're talking about the West Bank and you're talking about Gaza and coping in two different ways, right? The people in the West Bank, it's riddled with checkpoints. I'm sure you saw the barbed wire. Like she said, there's different roads. The wall has also made it very difficult for Palestinians to visit even relatives that are married and gone to a different town. So I think, how would they cope? I can't speak to that really because I'm not there. I'm not living that. I'm not living that, breathing it, and that's their day to day. I think that they build a sense of normalcy, maybe, and what I've seen is really using the internet, right? TikTok, Twitter, really reaching out to the world through art, through dance, through a lot of there's different medias where you can express yourself, writing. They have literature, they have films. So I think a lot of the coping, you could go to a different country and they're producing films on love and comedy, but remember, our reality is always, it's women with politics, right? So this is a romance with the political background. In Gaza, coping means also raising children, trying to keep them alive, trying to keep them fed, trying to get clean water. So how do you cope with something like that? Let's be real. Suicidal rates are very high in Gaza. Huge. Okay. There's people who were leaving on boats trying to get out. If they weren't detained by the Israeli military, they drowned or they were detained in Greece or whatever, country that they were heading to. A lot of people actually disappeared. They don't know where they are. These things don't make headlines. So how do they cope? I don't know. I mean, there's different mediums. Like I said, they can use those things. But in Gaza, it's very dire. It's a very dire situation.
I would say something that I know because I do have, I have friends, Miriam, she runs an Aisha project in Gaza Strip. There's currently right now 50,000 women, single women with children, living in public schools right now, not having any type of, like you said, any dire need is something that they're lacking of. Food, they're bombing our farms that are needed. Animals, they made sure that they bombed as many buildings as they can that they could drop. They only get 30 minutes in advance by text message or message phone call for them to leave that building because they know they're going to be targeted for that building to go down. So that was about 3-4 weeks ago. Now they're just not getting any warning because that's what Miriam told me. Bennett is not. He's worse than what Netanyahu was.
Yeah.
So right now the coping mechanism is, I think, there's apathy.
Do either of you know a lot about this new prime minister? I mean, I only know what I've seen in the mainstream media. I don't think he's going to be any better than I don't see any anticipation of change. Is there anything different to think about him?
To be honest with you, the difference is they're not getting warned before they get bombed. They're not getting. Definitely right now, from what I understanding, and my friends in Jerusalem, they're saying that they do not have. They're just watching live gunshots and stuff. I know my experience when I went and I prayed in Al-Aqsa, just entering. It was a privilege for me because I'm young. I'm under 60. So anyone that has a Hawaiya that can enter has to be over 60 to enter to go pray in Al-Aqsa. Tourists could go in as long as they have a visa and it's a passport from another country. So I have a US passport. I was able to enter. And even during the lecture on a Friday prayer, you hear gunshots. You really hear gunshots like it's normal. And I got scared myself and some of the tourists, and they're like, oh, no, everything's fine. It was just a warning because it was a child that was under 60 that came into the Aqsa to pray. So it's I would think they're just used to it, and this new prime minister, no different than the other, and I think it's worse. I want to say something about the 30 minutes you were talking about. That's not the case all the time.
Yeah.
Even with Netanyahu.
Oh.
Okay? So in Arabic, we have a saying, "Khara maksuma bkhit," which means one shit just divided by a string. Sorry, I had to go there. No, really. Like, it's like, for us, it's like, you know.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. They're both the same. There is nothing to look forward to, right?
I think that quote should be in the right.
Yeah, they're all killers. They've all bragged about killing. They look at us like we're cockroaches. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're all the same. They have one agenda. Okay?
So we should talk a little bit about the resistance. And I know that, again, I know I'm throwing a lot of mainstream media stuff at you, but I think it's important that we counteract that narrative, because I don't believe it to be true, but the reports about Hamas running the state and not running it well. I know there's problems internally with Palestine, but there's problems internally here in America, and there's problems internally politically in every country you go. Although I will say that if the intention of Israel's violence is to erode support of Hamas, it hasn't worked. Support in the recent poll has shown support for them is doubling and tripling, almost exponentially. So when we talk about political solutions, do you see leaders, and I don't want to just talk about Hamas as being the leadership of, because like you said, they're only in control of the one part of the partitioned occupied territories. So politically, who do you see as leaders for the Palestinian people today?
I think the people themselves. They're not our leadership. Hamas is not our leadership. The Palestinian Authority is not our leadership. There's problems. The Palestinian Authority does not want to have elections, right? Hamas does not want to let go of elections, right? We have problems with our leadership, and with every movement. You look at different movements around the world, you will see this. This is a real thing. I don't believe that they are our leadership. I think when you were talking about resistance, I think Palestinians resist in so many ways. It's not just the rockets. And listen, and a lot of people in Gaza do not support Hamas, let's say. They don't want them as their leaders. We have different political views and political opinions as well. But when you're in, and I don't want to call it a prison, I think that they have been just, I don't know what to call that. It's not just a prison. Because
it's not a
prison
humane
implies,
existence.
Yeah, because prison implies that they've done something wrong.
Yeah.
Right? They have been blockaded, put into this place, cut off from the rest of the world. No food, no water, not even freaking lentils. Lentils, sometimes they ban it. They put it on a damn list.
Yes.
So when you see, rockets coming from your area or whatever, of course you're gonna cheer on. These people are going to cheer on because this is a form of resistance, no matter who leads it. When they were watching in the West Bank with Palestinians, coming out for Sheikh Jarrah and, confronting Israeli soldiers and stuff, that's resistance, right? Reporting on these things through the internet, that's resistance. Munad Kurd from Sheikh Jarrah, the girl that they imprisoned, her and her twin brother. If you guys remember them, that's resistance, right? So resistance doesn't necessarily mean, one political leadership or another. It's actually collective. It's a Palestinian collective doing what they can to show the world the injustices and the violence that they have been enduring for over 70 years.
How about, do you have something on that? Yeah, please.
I'll add something to that. Adding to that, I would say something that's very important to look upon it is the majority, the West Bank does not get any kind of contracts coming in. They're not allowed to bring in any trucks since 1948, 1967. They have no way of any kind of rebuilding these towns that we have in the West Bank. And even Gaza, they're completely blockaded, like she was saying. So we're talking about $3.8 billion that are going for the Israeli country, they call it, right? To protect themselves from a leader that has Hamas, that has no kind of like weapons or kind of any kind of like really way of defending themselves. And like she said, it's the people. It's us here doing anti-BDS legislation. It's having anti-Semitism as well legislation coming into effect. You know, these kind of things, movements are making here in this country happen, will make something be acknowledged of the fact that West Bank, that is Palestine, that they're going through all this segregation and our tax dollar money. So it comes back here, posting on Instagram, posting on social media, and every aspect that you can. That's something of resistance.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I've had two kind of really great models for resistance that I've admired. And one of them is the ACT UP movement and the 80s, the gay community, the LGBTQ community that fought in defense, because they were getting killed. They were dying, and they had their backs to the wall. They were either going to fight and live longer, or they were going to die. And I see the same kind of impassioned resistance from the Palestinian people. It's inspirational, although it's sad because it's not necessary. I asked about Palestinian leadership as a matter of educating our public, but we're here in the belly of the beast. We're in the United States. We send billions of dollars in aid to Israel, a lot of which is used on military expenditures. We talked a little bit about the ceasefire. My suspicion is ceasefires are called when they need to replenish weapons. And the weapons suppliers make a lot of money by using Israel as a marketing ploy, essentially. Shanaz, you talked about that in our last interview, and it's really something, if you could go back to our last interview, that we got into that very deeper. But let's talk about something that we here in this room, and if you're watching on our live stream in the United States, can affect, which is American leadership. I almost fell off my chair when our senator here, Cory Booker, we have two horrible senators in New Jersey, Bob Menendez and Cory Booker. Cory Booker has taken as much money from AIPAC and Zionist organizations as anybody on the face of the earth, has always steadfastly made supporting statements regarding Israel. But actually, I saw him tweet something that was sympathetic to the Palestinian people. And Cory Booker is a soulless human being, and he's only going to move positions when he sees the winds of change coming in public perception. So for him to tweet that told me we're having an impact. I'm not going to call Cory Booker a leader, though. Do we have leaders? Who do we look to for leadership here in America? Besides, of course, Shanaz and Jessica.
I would say, Alexandria Ocasio, New York. She's standing with that bill against the money that is being supplied for that military aid for Israel against Hamas. You have, Congress members that are writing bills like Bernie Sanders. We have leadership in Congress, in DC, that is making an effect. And like you said it right now, Cory Booker had to make some kind of a change because he sees and feels it. And the pressure's on. The pressure's on politically, to be honest with you. Because the resistance in social media, the more people keep tweeting, the more people that keep posting on Instagram, more people are being aware of our tax dollars going overseas to military that is actually harassing, intimidating, incarcerating children that are not even having some kind of simple education. Public schools are being used as shelters for women that are left alone with children. That says big. That says big because right away we have politicians saying, oh no, our votes. Oh no, money. Oh no, they're having BDS movements against this company or against, Starbucks. There was a big thing, because Starbucks came out with something saying about, them supporting Israel, and he's the CEO, of a Zionist group. So these are big things that, I'm one of them. I stopped buying Starbucks.
And I have to do some convincing with some family
If
members.
if you want the official BDS list, you can go to bdsmovement.org, I believe. So, yeah, you're right. Some people did boycott Starbucks because the CEO is a big Zionist reporter, but they're not officially on the list. Just so you guys know.
We just made
so it's out of
made him on the
principle.
list.
Yeah, no, so it's just out of principle, like some people will be like, no, I'm not gonna purchase from, whatever. But I think Palestinians right now are in the process of rebuilding our humanity because it's been over 70 years, 100 years of just complete dehumanization. I remember growing up and just, as soon as they ask you in school if you're Palestinian, then the terrorist stuff comes out. Everything that I used to see on TV in Hollywood or whatever reflected my people, right? So there's this process of really humanizing ourselves. And I think that the BDS movement is also in connection with South Africa and the boycotts and apartheid and stuff like that. Making these connections are very real. And it's not just like within institutions, within schools, within universities, within your workplace. I mean, like as individuals, just talking to people, you can really, give them something different to think about. Yeah, and having an effect on what they traditionally believe. As for politicians, I think that, the heat is on. Because remember, politicians can't be politicians unless they have constituents, right? We vote for you. This is what we demand. This is what we believe. We need them to fall into line, right? So they're not perfect, right? There's a lot of, but the people who are, like you said, in Congress, who are advocating, who are creating these bills, they're still not perfect, right? There's still language that needs to be done, but it's a start.
I just want to put a correction in, and thanks to Yoshi back there for giving me the correction. The website is bdsmovement.net.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So thank you. That's very important. Good job, man. It's comrade
Yoshi.
looking out. So we are getting close to time. We still have a little bit of time left here. Going forward, so we talked about leadership ahead, and we talked about leadership in social media. Over the next, I guess we're going to watch Biden run for president again. Do you see this becoming a big issue during elections for him, finally? Because honestly, I saw some stuff when Bernie ran the first time, but I did not hear about it in the last election cycle quite as much. Do you think it's important that we bring this up during the elections?
Of course, this is something that, again, I cannot reiterate so much regarding our tax dollars. We are responsible for that, and something that we take, we don't take advantage of is our vote. Whether it's in local, whether it's in state, whether it's in federal elections, it starts with us creating that system, that making people understand that it's very important to put out that vote and voice and be, who cares if they put you on Facebook, or they ban you from Facebook prison, you come out of it. I've heard so many stories, people posting things up, whatever they want to say, and they go into Facebook jail. It's fine. As long as you make your point, and going back to, if Biden again runs or any other politician, because this movement is creating now, we're talking about 4 years from now, this movement has to grow. And how does it grow? Is by BDS, by going to your local elections, by going to your state elections, by making people these politicians take AIPAC money, not take organization Zionist money. That's how you're going to basically make a system of creating, a movement until that day. So that's something I would support big, your vote, whether it's local, whether it's federal, state.
Yeah, I also think that there's a lot of representation now within local governments and, the Senate and Congress and stuff. So I think that really being voices within our community, like you have to be representative, that we have to be represented. And how you do that is to go to those meetings, to join campaigns, right? Really it's not like infiltration, but really being part of that. You have to be part of a society in order to change it from within, okay? It's a slow moving process, but unfortunately, it took this massacre in Gaza to really kickstart things. Apathy is a terrible thing. And unfortunately, when we don't see bombs falling and we don't see people dying and we don't see all these things, people sit back and say, okay, it's comfortable now. No, it's not. You also need to check out the people that are organizing in your area. yes, the internet and social media is wonderful, but you also can do solidarity organizing with Palestinians on the ground. There's American Muslims for Palestine. There's PAC. There's a lot of things that you can find.
Yeah. So and on that, I'll wrap up with some final thoughts. But first, I do want to plug a student organization that you put us in contact with. I got this message from Jewish Voice for Peace. Join us as we rally in front of Representative Andy Kim's Willingboro office in this Friday, June 25th, starting at 4 p.m. They're demanding that Representative Kim call on Israel to immediately cease court proceedings against Palestinian families in the Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan. I hope I pronounced that right. Silwan, as well as co-sponsor HR 2590, which is known as the Palestinian Children and Families Act. Again, this is happening at 429 John F. Kennedy Way in Willingboro, New Jersey. Sorry, I missed that. Let me say that again. Willingboro, New Jersey. The rally is co-sponsored by Students for Justice in Palestine, Rutgers, New Brunswick, Central Jersey DSA, South Jersey DSA, ICNA, Council for Social Justice, New Jersey, Jewish Voice for Peace, Central New Jersey, and Black Lives Matter, New Jersey. Before we go, I want to give you guys a chance on some final thoughts. I will say thanks, of course, to Shanaz for opening up the Olive Press Eatery. This is a great place for some food. Everybody enjoy their food today?
Oh yeah.
Excellent. It really is. I think this may be the first place I ever ate Palestinian food in, and I became addicted to it pretty quickly. So it's great food, but before we go, I'd love to hear some final thoughts from our panel.
My final thoughts on, don't be scared. Do not fear. In vocalizing, you're going to lose friends. You're going to lose people. People are going to block you if you are supporting the Palestinian rights of human basic rights. That's something. Do not be surprised. You're going to see people completely not follow you again and not talk to you again because you're standing for human rights. Something that I know it is in us. It's embedded in us to care for each other. But this is something that is paying with our money from here, from the US, a country that we stand for. So do, like she said, BDS movement, make sure that you be vocal. Do not be scared of sharing anything. There's human rights that are being infringed overseas on our tax dollars. Really, I cannot reiterate more than that.
Shanaz, anything last thoughts?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to repeat, we all talk about like changing stuff and political leadership and who's your leadership. I don't believe in leadership. I genuinely do not. I don't believe in leadership here. I don't believe in leadership there in Gaza or in the West Bank. I believe in people. I believe in human beings. And I believe we have the power. I like to redefine power. I don't like the idea of power being top-bottom. I believe that we as individuals have power. And collectively, we can shift. We can shift the way that people on the top behave, the way they spend money, who they support, right? So if you ask me who I believe in us, and I believe in the Palestinian people.
Thank you very much. And with our audience, one time, free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Great panel. Thank you. So we are going to now, let's see if we can get a little music going. I'm having problems, so I'm just going to say heck with it. We have Leah's going to edit music in later. So we're going to do one more break. There it is. If you've listened to the podcast, it's not much different than the podcast. So our American political panel, come on up while I do my final segue here. I got to do one more after this. We're going to have the IDAVOX report next. Right? Come on up. Justin O'Hay, Peter Jacobs, Christian Perez, and Sally Ali, who's her first time on Revolution Radio. So give her a round of applause, and then give everybody else a round of applause.
Yeah. I don't know how this
So Again, you can donate www.njrevolutionradio.com. You can join our editorial board at that same website. And I encourage everybody to go back, check out some episodes. We have done almost 400 podcasts on Revolution Radio over the last 3 years. So there's plenty of stuff. There's a little search bar up there. If you have a particular topic that you like, you can go to our search bar, take a look at it. And of course, donate money, www.njrevolutionradio.com. We did a segment a couple of weeks ago, which our great writer entitled Joe or Schmo, which I had a lot of fun with. And we ranked our current president, Joe Biden, on a bunch of different issues, on whether he was being a Joe or whether he was being a Schmo. And it was a resounding Schmo. But I encourage it was one of our better episodes. And I had a lot of fun doing it with Christian. Of course, we have some serious stuff to deal with tonight, but overall, tonight's panel is just kind of looking at the current Congress, looking at the current executive administration, and talking about what they've achieved and what they've fell short on. As a revolutionary, as a guy that doesn't really believe in capitalism, I'm probably one of the most cynical people about American politics that you're ever going to meet in your whole life. And I've kind of tried to find the gray area in our system where I can at least mix the good with the bad. I still struggle with it. I just see too many people that work hard and don't get ahead. I still see people that are discriminated against for ridiculous reasons. And I still see people really not living up to their full potential. Our comrade Pat Fahey, who's on our editorial board, made a very eloquent statement about how capitalism is only allowing so few people to reach their full potential. When you have to make millions of dollars to be able to put forth, your ideas and put forth your visions and put forth your aspirations, then you just limit human potential. So I see struggling against capitalism as a struggle for just a better world. And I think that's the way any, either whether you're a socialist, anarchist, or communist, that's the way you see it. And I want to open up tonight with our new panelist, Sally, if we could give her the microphone real quick, because I always let the new person come on first and do a little bit of an introduction. If you want to meet the rest of them, Google them or go back in our Revolution Radio archives. But Sally, since this is your first time being a panelist, welcome. Thank you for coming up. Tell us about yourself before we get into this.
So first of all, I don't really do podcasts. I don't do interviews and stuff. But I follow
yes,
Brian. I follow Brian. And he asked me to do it, so I said, you know what, I'll come out and try it one time. It was nasty weather, so what a great day. But we made it work. So I'm a psychologist by trade, and I run an organization called My Skin Color is Human. It's based out of Jersey City, and it provides emergency services. It provides other services for people of poverty, people who are in transition. As you guys know, the last year during the pandemic, we had a plethora of people that change social economic statuses, and that can affect their mental health. And we didn't have any resources because everything shut down at that time. And so we had a bunch of organizations come out, grassroots organizations come out. And so I created that organization just to address those issues and homelessness in Jersey City, which has been a major issue. And so another thing, I advocate a lot online. I do have a big following, and not because of popularity, but because I say things that other people just think. I'm willing to take the heat for anything, and I stand by it, and I don't back down. And if I have an opinion, I'm going to back it up, no matter what. And I'm going to include other people in it. And so a lot of people find that very offensive, but I don't care.
We don't
at
either.
all. Yeah,
we don't either.
I don't. Yeah, I think that humanity comes first above all. And if we didn't label to begin with, right, we wouldn't have these issues. And so thank you for having me. This is a great, great network. And all the speakers that have spoken tonight have said some very eloquent and very important things. And, it's going to be touchy for a lot of the audience that watches this, especially on the Palestinian topics. A lot of people are going to look at it like, well, you didn't mention the Jewish people. And it's like, well, there's nothing to mention. So, yeah. But
Thank you very much. I brought you in here because I knew you might be a little gasoline to the fire. And so, we're not. We don't bring people to Revolution Radio to be quiet and make uncontroversial statements. So, thank you very much. Overall, so let's. Where should we start? Should we start with Joe or the Congress, or where do you want to go with this, Christian?
I had a couple questions here. I figured I was going to ask them.
Let's introduce the rest of our panel. By the way, Peter Jacobs ran for Congress, and that didn't work out. But he's here, and he's awesome, and he's been an activist, and you can see he looks a lot better with a beard and long hair, doesn't he? Justin O'Hea is a union leader. What union with, comrade?
HPAE.
HPAE.
Professionals and Allied Employees.
There you go. Thank you very much for joining us today and being on our panel. And Christian, you got some questions? Why don't you lead off?
Well, actually, I want to start off with Sally, because I know you wanted to talk about Juneteenth, right? Because there's a lot to unpack there with Juneteenth. I mean, I'm of the opinion that it's a good thing, right? We passed a law; it's a good thing, but
is it?
Well, I mean, for me personally, I would say yeah, because
But you're not black.
No, I'm not black. I'm definitely not black. But I would say that I think it's good to commemorate Juneteenth. But I would also say that there's a lot more work to do.
Yes.
Right? I mean, we need. There you go. Thank Daryle.
There's black.
I think. Yeah. So
Pull up the chair on the end there. Pull up the chair on the end.
People to the front, please.
Come on, Daryle. I mean, I'll let it go. I'll hand it off to Daryle. I'm gonna hand it off to Daryle.
Sit down. So have a seat down there. Yeah, join us, man.
Get it, Daryle. There you go.
Daryle gets this.
Yeah, I mean, you got two brothers sitting here, literally brothers. In this room, y'all gonna talk about Juneteenth without me?
Daryle Lamont Jenkins, everybody. Daryle Lamont Jenkins.
Now, what I would say about the holiday is that it is an effort on our part. Basically, we wouldn't even be talking about Juneteenth maybe 15, 20 years ago. Simply because we didn't even know it existed.
I didn't.
A lot of people, we didn't talk about Juneteenth. No one really knew what Juneteenth was. It was the effort of brothers and sisters in the community, long-standing elders in the community that said, we want to celebrate this. We want to honor our ancestors with this kind of holiday. So when you see the legislation being passed last week, making Juneteenth an official holiday, that's an effort on our parts. On our part. The thing is, don't get it twisted. We're not done. I mean, when we see what happened today with our voting rights, how they filibustered against that, how they're trying to keep us from teaching why Juneteenth is even a thing. When you see them trying to stifle our ability to voice opposition to that. Now we see we have more work to do. If there is anyone out there who thinks that Juneteenth is the end all be all, don't worry, we will remind them.
There you go.
That it's not.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryle.
And that's all I need to say.
There you go. Daryle Lamont.
A couple of minutes.
So this is what it comes down to for me. What brought about Juneteenth, right? Like he said, elders, years on end, we knew Juneteenth went about. A lot of us, our generation didn't know, but the generation that lived, you got to remember, right? Slavery wasn't that long ago. We keep pretending like it was thousands of years ago when it wasn't. It was recent. You know, we still have living slaves today that live amongst this earth today. So when you think about it, this began because of Black Lives Matter a year ago. These people marched in the street, but what did they march for? Did they march for us to celebrate a holiday we had no idea even existed? Or did we march for equality? Because all of this is symbolic, but is it tangible? Did it solve anything in any African Americans' lives? When we painted Black Lives Matter on the street and spent all that money, and instead of putting it back into the Black community or directly affecting Black people's lives, what message did we send about? We sent about a message that Black people are content with these symbolic gestures. A big statue of George Floyd, another statue of someone else that got killed, a sign here, a parade there. None of that changed your lives as Black people. It didn't change businesses. It didn't change the generational wealth gap. It didn't change your socioeconomic status. It didn't change your education. It didn't do anything. If anything, all it did was show you that you're living in a racist country. That's all it showed you.
This is my cynical attitude too, and I want to ask Peter, because Pete, you made an attempt to get in Congress. It was really honorable, and I don't mean to tease you about it. The guy really put up a fight, and he scared the Democratic Party to death. I mean, they flew in some wacky dude from Libya to run against them, and it was one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen a political party do. And I was in the Green Party for 5 years, so But when you look at our current state, man, I mean, there's no doubt that they could be doing more. What issues do you think they're ignoring and glossing over rather than addressing substance?
Absolutely. I mean, I think they could do more as if they even did anything to begin with. You know, so, but I want to touch on your point just to clarify for the audience. He wasn't from Libya, he was from DC.
Yeah.
You know, so
He was a white guy who murdered people in Libya.
Exactly.
So let me correct that
so,
statement.
You know, I like to say, you know, whenever there's a successful brown-skinned brother, there's always a white man to follow to steal their land, their gold, culturally appropriate their yoga. And here you are, you run for office. You do it in a time where nobody thought anything was important. You know, I'm a social worker. I saw on the ground. It was no surprise to me that Donald Trump won on that night in November, right, in 2016. But all these white folks in the liberal 7th district thought otherwise, and nobody paid attention till after. And the funny thing is, you know, with everything everybody was talking about, what Trump was saying about women, about people of color, yet they could only find a white guy to run and win? Come on, man. You know, that said everything
obvious.
that we needed to know. And I'll say this, you know, people always ask, well, Pete, you got to run for office again. How are you going to do it? And I say this, I'd rather take my chances fighting a revolution and getting assassinated than ever wasting my time running for office again.
That's the way to do it. I mean, honestly, I had my run-ins with the system too, and working in the unions, and honestly, just being a threat to a union president, I'm telling you, they would have shut that union down rather than let a revolutionary lead it. And you know, I admire your attempt as the year goes by. Even in hindsight, I admire your attempt there even more. But an attempt at it is all it's going to be, because they'll shut down Congress before they let a real revolution.
Exactly. And you see the squad, look.
They tried to.
Yeah, you look at the squad, you know, it's an admirable effort. But we saw what happened and what is happening now. I think the most promising moment came in the end of December, where Jimmy Dore put forward an initiative called Force the Vote, right? And this was our chance to leverage change for Medicare for All. I don't see Congress doing anything that is meaningful. And now it's not even on the table. Now you could just proclaim like you do every year, oh, we have 120 co-sponsors. It means nothing, because they all say that. You know, Kamala Harris, when she ran, she said, well, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I support Medicare for All. You know, and
very, very brave.
And what happens when you get into office? You can't even put forward a lousy public option, right? So I think we need to look outside of the electoral system. Having run, especially in a state like New Jersey, you know, the Soprano state, that party line, you cannot break it. They do not want it broken. There's tentacles that reach way beyond the state, controlling what's happening every single day. And there's a reason why a Peter Jacob or a Justin O'Hay who ran for office and Jessica who ran for office, it becomes very difficult for us to do what we need to do. What we need is a general strike in this country to get people together, working class to unite to bring about change. And, you know, relying on Congress to just answer your question, yeah, we need to tell the progressives, you know, the 4 or 5 members of the squad, look, you serve us. You know, the function of government is not to serve the elites. The function of government is to serve those who are governed. Yeah. And that's the message that we got to send loud and clear to those folks.
Thank you. Let's keep the microphone going that way, because you talked about Medicare for All, and healthcare is something that, you know, the squad campaigned on. You heard a lot about it during elections, and but then when it comes to, I saw a meme on Facebook the other day that really struck home with me, because it just makes you ponder the stupidity of our current system. And somebody wondered out loud why, in fact, our eyeballs and our teeth need separate insurance. You know, and I had never thought about that. I've been getting separate insurance for my eyeballs and my teeth my whole life, and it's absurd. Our entire healthcare system is absurd. Justin, you work in that system.
Yes, I do. So I'm Justin O'Hay. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I actually work at Rutgers University Behavioral Healthcare in Piscataway, but I'm also the president of the largest public sector healthcare local in the state, of like 2,700 members. There's a couple things. So it's really interesting. So like what Peter was talking about is, you know, we see, and this is not just politically with elected people. This also has to do with some of the top leadership, the top union leadership in this country. They commiserate with people who are flatly against our needs, and they capitulate. Like, so they'll take an idea like, oh, Medicare for all. Let's write it into, let's have our convention. We're going to say that we support it, but it's only a gesture. When it comes to the actual like nuts and bolts and actually trying to push for Medicare for all, I've been doing it for years in the largest nursing union in the state, and couldn't even get a table at our own convention for it. Okay. There's a march coming up, by the way, Washington, D.C., July 22nd, I believe, the March for Medicare for All. It's going to be a really big one. I recommend people go. In the state too, yeah. Okay, so statewide and in D.C. I'm heading to D.C. for that. But yeah, I mean, mental health professionals here have had it awful, and we need to gain more power as well, because the people that we deal with don't have a voice. They're not represented, and there's not enough people who are actual advocates doing the work. So I give props to all you guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. We're gonna come back to unions in a little bit, man. Sure. But I want to give Christian. Let's hit the mic and we'll do another round. I like the system we got going here. But I want to hand it off to the professor for Christian if you have any questions or comments so far, because we want to start talking about President Biden a little bit after this. But while we stay on Congress.
Oh, okay. I mean, in terms of Congress, I actually kind of prefer to talk about Biden, but we could talk about Congress. Can we jump to Biden?
Can we jump to Biden? Can we all give Congress our thumbs up or thumbs down?
All right, folks.
Congress so far. Anybody got a thumbs up so far? Let me ask one more question before we skip to Joe. All right.
Good.
What can Congress do? And I'll give each of you a chance. Let's try to do like a 1 minute answers. What can Congress do to make you start to move your thumbs up next week? Is there a bill they can pass? Is there a statement they can make? What can Congress do to make you I know you're not going to be happy, but what
in terms of like doing, like they need to do something. I don't want to hear them talk. It's like, the knee-jerk reaction.
So shut up.
No, not even that. It's like the knee-jerk reaction is I want them to pledge support for X. But they'll do that. But then you need them to follow through. So for me, it would be pass legislation and like be about it. So if it's Medicare for all, stand up and show up. Support Medicare for all. Support Palestinian freedom. Support whatever it is. But you have. Oh yeah, I'll pass it off.
Sally, what can
So Congress definitely needs term limits. We do not need people 80 years old telling people in 2021 how to live their lives. It's not going to work. So we need term limits, and we need to take away lobbyists. The fact that the matter is, if we didn't have money involved in politics and these people didn't have to depend on all of these contributions, we wouldn't have these issues to begin with. That should be illegal. Why isn't that illegal? Why are we legalizing them taking all of these profits and taking all of this money under the table and doing all of these things? Why do we even have lobbyists? How is that even legal?
I agree. Pete.
Well, I'm going to give the boring answer here because perhaps I ran for office and this is the way I still think. So there's two interesting bills that are going on, one for voting rights and one for infrastructure. Voting rights on one hand, look, if you want to require voting, a voter ID, then do everything, every other piece of the puzzle needs to fit towards it. Automatic voter registration. Ensure every single person could get an ID if they don't have one. Those things got to go in place. However, none of that's going to happen. They're going to pass this law. They're going to continue to disenfranchise folks. And then they're going to say, oh, it was a bipartisan success. Or the Republicans ain't going to do anything. And then the Democrats are going to be like, see, this is why you got to vote for us in the midterms.
Yeah.
And the second thing is infrastructure. If you run the economy hot within the next 4 years, then the Democrats could win again, right? If you put money into people's pockets, you put a big infrastructure program that's not a giveaway to these big companies and corporations like they're trying to do now. They're trying to privatize our ports of entry right now, giving it away for all these people with all these funny terms like asset recycling and things like that. Google it if you want to find out. I won't bore you with that. But if you could put people to work like they did with the Tennessee Valley Authority, with the public works projects. Look what's happening in Memphis. People are sitting for 3-4 hours because they can't get on a bridge that crosses I-40, right? I've been on that bridge traversing the country this past summer. It took me 45 minutes to get across. I can't imagine every single day you're sitting there for 3 hours. Build the damn country, put people to work.
It's that simple.
There you go. Justin, fix Congress real quick.
There's already a bill, the American Anti-Corruption Act. Representative Nelson has been pushing on it for a while, but it just hasn't gained much traction. There's some bipartisan support. It gets rid of the whole lobbyist problem. It stops the revolving door between lobbyists and actual positions in D.C. I'm trying to remember what else it does. It stops dark money coming into politics. It does everything that pretty much fuels our political system at this point in time. People talk about like you don't believe in leadership. There is no leadership. The people who are running this country are corporations. Clearly, they have more influence over our politics and over what gets passed in DC and on a state level than any of us, even collectively. So we have to literally chop the hands off of the stranglehold that corporate America has on our government. Because honestly, it's been driving imperialism, it's been driving fascism all over the world. Anywhere that we export it, it turns into a vacuum and a war zone, and we wind up with a bigger migrant crisis and all these. It's getting rid of corporate control in our government is probably the single most important thing if we want to actually tackle other issues, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a
back on that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. I will give my answer to my own questions. Congress can immediately cede power to a dictatorship of the proletariat.
I want to say, does anybody know how much the President of the United States makes a year, salary-wise? 50?
200 and something.
Last I checked, I thought it was about 400,000.
I think you're right.
Let's just say $500,000. Hell, let's say $1 million a year. Let's say the president makes $1 million a year. Does anybody know how much they raised in the last presidential election alone? We're talking billions of dollars now. I mean, I don't off the top of my head, I don't remember, but I think Barack Obama in 2012 was $1.25 billion. Mitt Romney was $1 billion, and it's only ever going to go up. And I remember when I was in college, Bush amassing $100 million was unfathomable, right? But piggybacking on what Sally and what everybody has said now about lobbying, if you're the president of the United States and you're already corrupt, are you going to follow the millions of people who pay you $400,000 a year, or the handful of lobbyists that have raised over $1 billion in a super PAC that you could spend on whatever you want, right? Because super PACs are, they're unaccountable. But I just wanted to touch on that. And if we want to end intervention overseas, Latin America, and all that, it starts with taking money out of politics, right? It's to protect markets. It's to protect interests overseas. That's why we commit American soldiers to those wars. Gangster of capitalism. Yeah.
Well, you wanted to get to Joe Biden, our president, and look, my impression of Joe Biden is he's tried very hard to lower the temperature in the room after the complete lunacy that was the Trump presidency. I do give Joe Biden credit for not being a raging lunatic at the podium, which has been a very conservative effort to his point, almost to a fault. Yeah. Almost to a fault. He's almost playing the nice guy, I'm going to heal all the wounds, which can be a problem in leadership because it stops you from taking positions. Trying to appease everybody is as weak leadership as, just being a narcissist and only appeasing yourself. The problem I see with Joe Biden is he has guys like Secretary of State Andrew Blinken, who is one of the worst human beings you will ever see in your whole life. If you read this guy's Twitter feed, it's one tweet after another about how we are better than whatever country and name your insult here. He's done it to every country from the Middle East. And when China met with him in Alaska, they were one of just a few countries that have started to put Andrew Blinken in his place. You don't come to the table with world leaders of a nuclear armed state and a gigantic economy and start lecturing them on human rights before you shake their hands and say, hi, how are you doing? But that's the approach Andrew Blinken takes, and he does it with the permission of nice guy Joe Biden. So while Joe Biden plays a nice guy on TV, he's got his people doing his dirty work for him. And that's kind of my overall impression of Joe Biden. You're never going to see him take a heavy hand, but he's always got his crew do that work.
Yeah, I mean, he's a Democrat, so he's a status quo warrior. I mean, he's the guy that said, even if everybody in Congress was in favor of Medicare for all, he's the guy who said, if it falls on my desk, I'm not going to sign it. He said, it doesn't matter, right? So, I mean, for me, I felt like it was 2004 again. And the Iraq war is raging, and there's this massive anti-war movement, and John Kerry's not against the war, right? And that's what it is. It's them. I mean, I'll pass it off, but the phrase I got to keep bringing up, I heard it first time at 18, and it blew my mind, was they called the Democratic Party the gravedigger of progress. And unfortunately, I mean, you just got to not be the Republicans when you're the Democrats, and that's That's what that is.
Probably
Pass it off to Sally.
one of the more perfect examples I'm saying is the $15 an hour minimum wage. I mean, they blamed a powerless parliamentarian for not being able to pass a $15 an hour minimum wage rather than taking it on chin, and that represents the Joe Biden administration to me.
So the reality of it is that we didn't vote for Biden, we voted for Kamala, right? But Kamala wasn't in a position to be president, she was in a position only to be vice president. So, and then we didn't vote for Kamala for any other reason than the fact that she was black. Because she's always voted against black people and caused their demise in government. And so we're not gonna pretend that that didn't happen. We took the lesser of two evils, or so we thought. But we were in a position where we could have took Bernie Sanders. But we've been systematically enslaved for so long by corporations that we don't think that the things this man is saying are even possible. We don't believe in entrepreneurship. And just to prove that, today you asked Tika, you said, what can black teachers change in education, right? And she never thought to say entrepreneurship. Why can't black people open up their own black schools for black people? Why? What is the problem with that? Why can't black people represent other black people like white people open up school for other white people and then limit the qualifications to make sure that black people don't come in, and then create these little mini scholarships so that they can use you as a front for their school to get funding? Why? You know, so she didn't even think of entrepreneurship, but systematically, this is how we were designed to live in this society. We don't ever think of entrepreneurship. And then when we did have trade schools and we did have black people succeeding in those trades, we created something called unions. And we unionized everything, and we let white people create these unions, run these unions, and then take out all of the black people. And this is why we no longer have trades and we don't have success for the African Americans in this country or any other minority, because this is the reality of it. If African Americans are not treated well and they are the majority, then no other minority will be treated well as well. This is just how it works.
I think putting it on black people to overcome racism in this country is just wrong. And we see, and we, again, I just learned about the Tulsa race riots and the massacre that happened maybe within the last 5 or 6 years of my life. And, you know, you gave some examples of when people of color start to succeed, white supremacy will not let that happen.
No.
And so, you know, it really is, it's systemic racism. And when we say systemic, we don't mean somebody is racist or this country was founded by slave owners. And one of the things that lawyers hate me for is everything I say. And when they refer to the Constitution, they say, well, the Constitution gives you the right. My general response, no matter what they say after that, is the Constitution is an oily rag that was drunkenly scribbled by angry white men so they could continue to own people. Yeah. And we really can't rely on a system in that basis for justice. And no matter how hard people try, if a system's set up to make them fail, odds are they're going to fail. Of course, we have exceptions, and we root for those exceptions, but they can't be the exception anymore. Yeah. We can't have a black person succeeding being special, you know, and that's still the case. It's still the case. And there's a good documentary coming up on black quarterbacks in the NFL, which I think speaks a lot to that issue as well. Yeah. Sorry for that. What do you got, Pete?
I was blown away. We're talking about Biden. My thoughts about Biden.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, we can get back to that. We kind of, we're lefties and we're having, we've been talking for 2.5 hours now.
I felt the aura, the energy. I'm trying to bring that too. You know?
Go with it, man. Go.
You know, I'll say this about, you know, relating to everything here. I think I'm from India, and every morning in Kerala, the state I'm from, people are taking their morning tea or coffee and they're reading the newspaper. And it's not something that you find so much here. And I had to ask, you know, my uncle and family members, like, why do you guys really read the paper? And they gave me the same response Denzel Washington gave Ethan Hawke at the beginning of Training Day. It's like, I know 99% of this is bullshit, right? But I like my stories. So if you don't want me to read my bullshit, you tell me a story of that, right? Whereas here in the United States, people watch CNN and they'll, oh my God, Russia's interfering in the elections. It's over now. So people don't understand propaganda. And what I want to tie that into here is the fact that people see Biden and they see it as someone who is who he says he is. But in reality, these are just people who exist for the narrative creators. There's a reason why Trump didn't win re-election, because he dropped maintaining that narrative. There's a reason why Netanyahu's out as well, because he stopped maintaining the narrative that exists. We need to stop looking to politicians because that is just the story, the drama, the bullshit. What's behind them, what's behind the curtain is what we need to focus on. So we could talk about Biden and how entertaining he is when he talks about, kids rubbing up on his legs and him sniffing people. That's great, That's the bullshit I do want to know.
The hairy legs.
Makes for good memes. It makes for good memes.
Exactly, and memes are life. But the reality is we need to tear down that curtain and look onto what's actually happening and who's controlling it, and that goes back to capitalism. If you destroy that narrative, then we can fundamentally shift our paradigm.
Wow, so how do I follow that stuff? I mean, let's be honest. You want to think about how effective the propaganda machine is. Joe Biden, for 47 years, however long his career has been now, was one of the most conservative free market Democrats you can ever find. So in the 1970s, he was supporting forced busing. In the 1980s, he wrote the damn crime bill. He's somebody who helped Bill Clinton deregulate Wall Street to eliminate Glass-Steagall. He never met a war that he didn't love. He was one of the biggest people banging the drum for the Iraq War.
He complained about reparations.
Absolutely. This is literally right. It's not long. It's even closer to us than what most people think. And somehow they've created this 24/7 news cycle of sensationalism and just they barrage people constantly with so many different things that it just becomes mindless. Now I see I see headlines about, Joe Biden's going to be the next FDR. Can we please stop? Can we please stop? I cannot deal with it. This guy is one standard deviation away from Donald Trump. Look at his history. Read. We have a problem in this country. Tika and everybody was so, articulately speaking on these issues in our educational system. Listen, Ronald Reagan killed teaching civics in schools back in the 1980s. Our system doesn't educate people to understand our own history. It's so whitewashed. I'm amazed that the whitewashing of history didn't actually come up in that conversation because, frankly, I think that that's one of the biggest crimes.
Yeah.
We've literally erased huge portions of our history that are really important, and we figure, we're going to throw softballs to little kids. We're not going to teach them about Tulsa. We're not going to teach them about slavery and these different things. Frankly, we live in a system that is so watered down and so flooded with bullshit that most people don't even know what the truth is. Look, we've got Q and all these other kind of conspiracies out here. I know that's your cup of tea, but look at where it's delivered us. And if we think that Joe Biden is the next FDR, I've got a bridge to sell you, the one over on I-40, whatever that is.
Yeah, you got both mics. Go ahead. Go ahead. Take that. Use that one.
I want to. I totally lost my train of thought there for a second. Sorry about that. But really quick, talking about misinformation, one of the things that always boggles my students' minds is when I tell them the American Revolution actually was not a revolution, right? A revolution requires a change in leadership. It requires massive land reform. The American Revolution was just an anti-colonial struggle, right? If you're an average American in the 1780s or whatever it is, right? Nothing really changed massively for you. There was a middleman that you're no longer paying money to in the British Crown, but that's why you end up with Shays' Rebellion, the Second American Revolution, is because the American Revolution left a lot of, we'll say, they didn't go all the way that they needed to go to, right? And when they condemned the French Revolution and the violence that took place in the French Revolution, that's because they realized that there were so many people devoted to the old regime that they were not going to be able to move forward without doing something. I don't know. Brian wants to guillotine people. I don't know if I'm in favor of all of that. But,
I don't want to. I just
in the
think
United
it's
States,
funny.
I mean, people that just pack up and go to Canada. They can do that in France.
I don't want. I just think that Jeff Bezos getting guillotined is funny. I don't want it to actually happen.
I would love to.
And it is funny.
Back into Earth.
Project them into space.
All right. God, I love this panel, but we are going to get to the IDAVOX report soon. We have enough time to do one more round, but I wanted to talk to Justin real quick because we're going to start with unions. Sally mentioned, white people taking over black unions, and that's historically repeated many, many times. Some of the worst examples were in the Detroit auto workers, and the auto workers that founded the CIO movement, that did sit-down strikes, that really injected, socialism and communism and anti-capitalist thought into our labor unions in its heyday. Those same unions were taken over by a racist parts of the UFCW. I mean, we're talking clans showed up and burnt crosses on people's lawns kind of shit to get them to join the white unions. And Justin, you and I both come from union backgrounds. I still believe unions have a place. I believe in the Marxist definition of unions as working class centers of power. But they're not that. I mean, we got to be honest about our own cause and the corruption that takes place. There's still good people in the cause, though. And I'm not here to trash it because I do that enough, but I do think there's potential. If there's segments of society where I think there's potential for revolutionary activity, and I think one of those parts is unions. We've seen it in the Chicago Teachers Union, in independent unions like the IWW at Jimmy John's. How do we foster better unions for our country?
Okay. Well, I think that we need to actually be real and actually be critical. Learn how to be critical about leadership without fearing it, without fearing retribution. What I've noticed, so for instance, like my particular union, actually, I don't know the exact percentages of demographics, but I actually do believe that my union's mostly people of color. But it's a huge cross section, so it's nurses and healthcare professionals all over the state. So that really cuts into a lot of different demographics. But number one, we have to be able to criticize the leadership, and leadership has to be able to take criticism without retribution, right? And that's a leap. That's going to be a big thing to achieve. I also think that we need to stop paying so much money to the Democratic Party, to be honest with you. But the reality is, with corporate money, the amount of money that unions give to these different people is literally like pennies. It's nothing. It's crackers. So there's a lot of different issues that play into that. We need to fight for more bargaining power. So I just need to kind of plug this thing real fast. So right now, anybody who lives here in New Jersey, there's a bill that they're trying to shoot it down. It's S3810, that's the Senate bill, S3810, or the Assembly bill, which is the one I think that we need to give attention to at the moment, is A5862. It's the Responsible Collective Negotiations Act. And what it would do is it would expand our capacity to be able to negotiate over different things like layoffs, assigned duties, disciplinary matters, performance evaluations, promotions, and subcontracting. All that stuff's completely dictated by management. People don't realize that the workplace is the most authoritarian system, more so than any government you'll ever find. They literally control when you eat, when you go to the bathroom. Like, nothing like that exists in the government even, right? But we need to expand our power. We also need to kind of encourage young people, because I've seen this. Like, socialism's been really growing, like, in a big way, and there's a lot of people. To me, it's not all about reading theory. It's about getting out there and actually meeting people and doing activism and speaking truth to power, getting shot down, getting radicalized by it, and then really saying, where are these positions of power that we need to seize? Because honestly, I think trying to go by the process all the time is just going to keep you in the dugout, more or less. That people need to actually fight, and they need to get together and form solidarity amongst the actual rank and file. Like, really organize your local to be a leverage point against your state federation if it needs to be. And sometimes have that infighting, if you will, in order to try and, eventually take the power back. Because honestly, unions right now are more of a tool of the Democratic Party than they are really a tool of the people right now.
And that's only going to have, just to expand on that, because I agree with everything he's saying, it really got to start with the members showing up to meetings and educating themselves. You can't take off over your union unless you know how to run for president. And, these union leaders deliberately keep their membership ill-informed of their own bylaws and constitution, so you don't know how to run against them or appeal a decision or, take them to the NLRB if they refuse to arbitrate your case. I as a union rep, I spent 14 years, at a large corporation, and about 10 of them I spent representing people. And the thing I had to do when I first sat down with somebody who got in trouble or had a grievance was explain to them the grievance process and what I did as a union rep and what a shop steward was. And that's a failing of our education system, of our movement, and of our government, to not inform people of their rights in the workplace, which are fewer and fewer every day.
And real quick, so that bill is supposed to so we're trying to get calls to our local assembly people and Senate people either tonight or tomorrow. Thursday is when it's either going to pass or fail, more or less. So, and so they're deliberating right now. The big employers in the state, which mine is one of them, Rutgers University, is one of the biggest employers that's actually pressuring them to stop it. And the reality of the situation is that, we represent people who are on the front lines all over the state. In the heart of COVID-19, University Hospital, the 3 medical schools, all of our community mental health and addiction services, they laid thousands of us off. They literally created a fake fiscal emergency to lay thousands of people off at the height of the pandemic, kicking them off their health insurance and all these kinds of things. They took our work share furlough deal that would save them $100 million right off the bat in the winter time, so in the first wave. They took our deal, gave it to all the non-aligned people, the non-union people, let us suffer and fight for the next 6 to 8 months. Then finally brought us to the table about it. But first they laid off thousands of workers, and then they gave us the deal and this or that. Listen,
the power dynamic.
Our employers don't give a fuck about us.
They don't.
And people who feel like, oh, I don't want to get the boss upset or things along those lines, at this point in time, look at what the essential workers are doing. They're pretty much telling them, I'm not going back to work. Pay me. How do you pay me? Pay me. Unless you pay me, you tell me you value us. Rutgers, President Holloway was telling us, our beloved community. Oh, the beloved community that you just kicked out of their jobs and off their health insurance?
Yeah. That's a good chant, by the way. That's a really good chant. Fuck you, pay me, right? Fuck you!
But you know what? You want to see what people value, look where the money goes. Does money go to mental health? Does it go to addictions? Does it go to any of these things? No, because they don't value it. They don't care. If you're not fighting for something, it has no value.
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. We're going to get to final thoughts here now because we're going to move on to the IDAVOX Report with Daryle Lamont Jenkins, myself, and Christian Perez, which is a great program. We talk about Anti Fascist work, and we got some victories to celebrate because we stopped some Nazis from organizing stuff here in New Jersey. So we get to wave the flag of victory a little bit, but also keep you informed. So that's coming up really quickly. But I want to take this chance to thank all my panelists, Christian for his long-standing effort at Revolution Radio, Sally for showing up for the first time at a live event. That takes guts too. So thank you very much. And Pete, Justin, everybody, thanks for showing up tonight. But before we go, if you have any final thoughts, absolutely love to hear them before we go.
Nothing really. You'll hear me on the IDAVOX Report, so please donate, njrevolutionradio.com/donate. If you can, please join the editorial board. Revolution Radio depends on support. All right? This is people's radio. This is people's media, so we need your help. Thank you.
So I just want to wrap this up by saying that for a year, Black people fought, for equality, and we had nothing come about from that. But yet, if you saw the Stop Asian Hate, that came out for just a couple of months. It was about 2 or 3 months, and now we have bills against Stop Asian Hate. And the problem here is this: the majority of Congress is not Asian. Actually, Asian people are the minority of the entire Congress. They're not even represented in Congress to be. So who are the people in Congress fighting for if they're not fighting for their own people? So they're not going to fight for you if they're not fighting for themselves. And so you got to remember that. And this is not against Asian people. They deserve to be respected and protected, but so do other races in this country. And so if you don't have an excuse for that, then you shouldn't have an excuse to treat Black people the way they do in this country.
Two things. The first, every single holiday dinner that you have or meeting, July 4th is coming up. When you're with your family doing barbecue, make it an effort to end every political conversation about a general strike. That is the only solution whatsoever. Second, support Revolution Radio.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. And we are going to get ready to go to the IDAVOX report. Thanks again to our panel. I have a round of applause for our panelists up here. Thank you very much. So because of, sound issues and we're first time out, and like I said, we were a little bit rusty, our live audience is not going to hear the intro music, but it's by a band called the Chambers Brothers. Is that the name of the band? Or
No, it's Midnight
Transit.
Dylan Chambers.
Dylan and Lester Chambers, and Lester Chambers is his dad. They do the sound on that intro, and it's awesome. So just go home after this show and fast forward a little bit to the intro so you can hear that music if you're in the live stream audience. But if you are, if you're in the live audience, but if you're in the live stream audience right now, like every Tuesday night at 8 p.m., this is the IDAVOX Report. Boom, you're live.
Hi, everybody. How y'all doing tonight? This is Daryle Lamont Jenkins. This is and this is the IDAVOX Report. Wasn't that a lovely theme song?
That was. I love that music song. It's a great one. It's one of my favorites.
Now, I'm going to tell you what's lovely. This place here. Yeah. I mean, this spot here. I want to try to make sure we remember the name of this place. It's called the Olive Press Eatery. Mm-hmm. And y'all out of sight. It's the first time I'm here. I mean, Metuchen kind of like renovated over the past, I guess, 5-6 years. And this is my first time coming in. Anytime a Whole Foods shows up, you know that they're doing some work on this place. So props go out to the Olive Press Eatery for having us here. We will be back. Definitely 100% we will be back, even if we're not doing this. I mean, I was already.
I'm coming back.
I'm coming back. I'm bringing.
I want more fries.
Yeah, I want more fries.
Those fries are good.
See, I shouldn't really be eating like that because look, but it is what it is, and I'm still gonna come back and eat. But I want to thank everybody for coming out here today. Nice little crowd here, and we're going to be talking about them. We're just basically going to chew the fat. No pun intended. But I want to send a shout out to Justin for coming out wearing the Power Trip shirt. Yeah. I was going to bring that up
Rest
before.
in peace, Riley. Yeah.
Rest in peace, Riley. Gail. Yo, Power Trip, for those who don't know, they're this band out of Dallas, was it?
I thought it was Boston, but
Dallas
Texas,
or Austin?
Texas.
It's Texas. And they didn't bring Texas politics with them. They were a really hard band, still are. I mean, I went to give you an idea of how hard they are. I saw them opening up for Exodus and Obituary.
I love Obituary.
They're awesome.
So they get on stage opening up. I'm like, swinging the axe. Oh shit! And I'm just like loving them to death, man. They were just out of sight, and I'm really glad I was able to get a chance to see them play. Riley Gale, the lead singer, passed on last year. 33 years old.
Drug overdose.
Yeah, drug overdose. I mean, it sucks.
It
is. I mean, but we were sitting there talking about earlier about all the bands that are going to be out there playing. We were sitting there talking about, God forbid, the band from Franklin High School, my alma mater. Yeah. And they're like an all black metal band for everybody who wants a short explanation about who they are. But damn it,
they're pretty intense. I remember the first time I saw them, it cracked me up. The lead singer Byron, I believe, came out, and I'd never seen you see your flashy rock stars, but I've never seen a dude treat being a rock and roll singer, a metal singer, as a job. The dude walked out there in a hoodie. He had his lanyard hanging out, and it was he was just like a cashier at a restaurant, and they just killed it that night.
Yeah, that's who they are.
And it was like I think it was E-Town Concrete, God forbid. E-Town, yeah, can't get me started at E-Town. I'll go nuts. And then and I think Zayo was the other band that opened.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with them.
And they weren't that good.
But yes, you got to understand. I'm just like all music through and through. So, but we got to talk. We got to talk business. We got to talk some victories. We got to be happy about things. I mean, we were talking about Juneteenth earlier. I came sneaking in on the last panel just a minute ago. Actually about 45 minutes ago, and we were talking about Juneteenth. And there's a few things that happened on Juneteenth that was really important. I'm gonna start off with the first thing. First thing is there was a march. People's Organization for Progress had put it together out in Newark, New Jersey, where they observed the Juneteenth holiday by calling for reparations. And reparations all of a sudden is getting on that front burner. And to give me an idea how much it was on that front burner, Congress people came on, participated in the rally. Like Bonnie Watson Coleman came on and spoke. They was praising Sheila Jackson Lee because she's pushing for reparations. Oh my goodness, Payne. I forgot his first name.
Donald Payne.
Donald
I didn't
Payne.
say Ronald. It's Donald.
Yeah, Donald Payne came up and he spoke about it. Now, look, we just had a discussion about our politicians. You're not supposed to trust your politicians. Okay? All right? I mean, let's just be real. I mean, you are not supposed to do that. Your politicians really in the real scheme of things, they're supposed to follow your lead. Unfortunately, they're not doing that now, but we just have to keep on insisting. That's how we got the Juneteenth holiday in the first place, as I was pointing out before. We insisted. So, but now, as I had said, we're not done. And the whole thing about reparations came up. The beauty about also that day was that it was in front of Newark City Hall. We marched all the way down to Newark City Hall. And at Newark City Hall right now, there's a huge statue of George Floyd. He's sitting on a park bench where, and there's an empty spot where people can sit and pose with the picture, pose with the statue. It was privately funded, and it's going to be there for about a year. So if you get a chance to go out there and just pay tribute, if you're not one of those kinds of people that don't want to pay tribute, if you catch my drift, thinking you can start something there, I said Newark, New Jersey. And I'll just leave it at that. But we also had some other things. Speaking of those clowns, things happening on Juneteenth that we thought was pretty objectionable. There was actually a metal fest happening and this is what brought up the conversation last week. There was a metal fest that was supposed to be happening in New Jersey on Juneteenth, 19th and the 20th, but they were featuring white power bands. They were featuring Nazi bands, and we was calling to shut it down. Only thing is they basically kept the location quiet. We got some wind about it. Supposed to be in Asbury, New Jersey, not Asbury Park, but Asbury, New Jersey.
I made that mistake. I was calling people up at Asbury Park. Get ready. Get ready.
You got a car? Yeah. Asbury's further north than Asbury Park, but looks like they had this show, but not much talk is there's not much talk about it. So we're not worried about it. I mean, I hear that there was something that caused a little bit of it to rain out. So hey, God took care of it, I guess. Hey, God struck somebody by lightning, a Nazi by lightning a couple of years ago. So really? this dude from the Atlantic City got struck by lightning. So obviously he's on God's on.
Is that the builder guy? Is that the builder guy?
The builder guy? Yeah.
Okay.
Ryan Brantley. Go ahead. And if we want to talk about unions, and I bring this up every time I bring that up, there was a monument dedicated to fallen workers, and for some strange reason, his union thought it would be nice to put his name on it. It's in Atlantic City on Tennessee Avenue. He was one of the founders of one of the most violent hate groups in New Jersey, and called the Atlantic City Skins. And if God saw fit to take him out with a bolt of light, why are we putting his name on a monument dedicated to more respectable workers? I mean, Nazis don't even like unions. And you're putting him on a monument to them. It's to union workers. And this has been the case for the past couple of years now. We've been calling for years to get that name removed. Remember, the name is Brian P. Bradley. If you go down there and you got a hammer and chisel, hold it in your hand and just stare at it. Wish you can do that. Because remember, chiseling it off will be against the law. That's vandalism.
No chiseling Nazis.
No chiseling Nazis. However, you can also make sure that people know that you are not too happy about that name being up on that monument. So that's where I'm going to go with that. But there was another victory that took place. We was also dealing with an Islamophobic scumbag out of Virginia Beach by the name of Scott Presley. He was a member of a group called Act for America for some time, and he had brought. He was the guy that tried to organize nationwide rallies against Muslims. He called it against Sharia law, and his thing, just like it's supposed to happen, white supremacists helped them along with it. Neo-fascists were participating in it, organizing. When I went to the one in New York, the group Identity Europa, which everybody knows from Charlottesville, was there. Proud Boys obviously were there, and it pretty much put a mark on him as far as we were concerned. So he decided he was going to he's on tour right now, and he's holding, he calls them registration trainings. Basically, it's a recruitment drive for folks who think like him to try to get them in the political scene, and or get them politically involved. And he was joined by a guy named Darius Mayfield, black dude out of East Brunswick, New Jersey, and
QAnon supporter.
And a QAnon supporter. He refuses to say he's QAnon, but every time we turn around, there's somebody QAnon around him. Well,
he freaks out about the kids too. The kids are being kidnapped by lizards and pedophiles or whatever.
Yeah. He has that on his Facebook page. So what we did, we said, look, you're not coming. I mean, you may be okay in Katy, Texas with that BS, but you're not coming to Jersey with that. No. So, especially not going to the American Legion Hall with that. Considering what the American Legion did on Memorial Day to the lieutenant colonel that was trying to tell everybody the true history of Memorial Day, which was slaves paying tribute to those Civil War veterans on May Day. And for those who don't know, the American Legion has sponsored an event where a retired lieutenant colonel was about to speak on that. They unplugged him. They unplugged him. That American Legion post killed that charter. They had to resign. And here comes Scott Presley going to the American Legion halls in North Brunswick, New Jersey, not too far away from my office, and Middlesex Borough, New Jersey. So we started sounding the alarm, and the American Legion said, no, we're not doing this again. So they bounced them. So they tried to regroup. They had they tried to have it at the Elks Lodge in Middlesex and at the VFW. That's how they regrouped, but then we sounded the alarm again, and they said no. So we destroyed their plans here in New Jersey. They were not able, as far as I can tell, they were not able to have their event, and that's because New Jersey don't put up with that. New Jersey citizens don't put up with that, let me stress. What the politicians do, whatever. But that wasn't the only, I guess, victory that we can celebrate. We also had somebody else out of Jersey called himself online Gypsy Crusader. And his real name is Paul Nicholas Miller. And he was out of North Brunswick. He was out of New Brunswick. His parents run tarot card shops out there. And as you could probably tell by
Scam alert.
I ain't going there. I ain't going to diss nobody like that. But, I mean, because there are some positive cats out there who do tarot work. I'm not gonna mess with anybody's spirituality, but this dude here, if you could tell by his name, he's part Romanian, and he's also part Mexican, and he's a full-on white supremacist. You heard me correctly. I have written articles about people of color joining FASH. This is not surprising to me. So he was best known, he first got known because he participated in some pseudo brawl that happened in 2018 where the Proud Boys attacked Anti Fascists outside a speech that was being given by their founder, Gavin McInnes. He was a part of that. He didn't get arrested and go to jail for it or anything, but he was also able to go on One American News Network and talk about his experience. Later on, you start seeing him not just with the Proud Boys. He's also calling for people to kill Ilhan Omar or Bill Gates, and cheered on the mass shooter in New Zealand. And then he started hooking up with the Boogaloo movement. Now, I mean, I heard Jimmy Dore's name mentioned. I have no fondness for Jimmy Dore, as we probably have seen in the past weeks, because he wants to associate himself with that particular crowd. But Paul Miller was the guy that basically spelled out what the Boogaloo movement was about, where he said that it was about the upcoming civil war that would take place if the right feels it cannot win national elections due to the changing demographics. Well, why am I bringing him up today? He got picked up back in March in regards to being a convicted felon in possession of weapons. He's not here in New Jersey anymore. Because he decided he needed to split to Florida where he can, and in his words, use the N-word a lot freer. So, but now he's really not free enough to do that because the feds picked him up on this charge and he pled guilty to it and he's looking at 30 years. Now, I am not too fond of this law enforcement system that we have, but I am never going to shed a tear when something bad happens to a Nazi. So it's good to see him gone. I hope he never comes back. And that's just the way it goes. We're happy in that regard. It does not mean that we don't have to keep calling the criminal justice system to task because, quite frankly, you don't give them a pass. So that's just the way I'm at on it. Your turn. I talked enough.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, I just touch on a couple of things. Whenever these white supremacist, far-right types come to your neighborhood, come to your town, I think they realized a long time ago that, some of them realized, they didn't all realize that, they kind of had to put the hoods away, right? So I'll put on a suit, I'll put on a tie, I'll get a nice fancy education, right? But it's always a Trojan horse with these people, right? If they're coming to clean up your town, that's a foot in the door. That's a foot in the door to something a lot more insidious. When Scott, I'm sorry, what I was saying was Scott Pressler, his gimmick was he would find towns, usually with a progressive senator or congressman or woman. In this case, I believe it was Elijah Cummings' old district,
Cummings, yes.
A prominent black lawmaker, and piggybacking on what Trump said about how Cummings' district was chaotic. He said, we're going to go there and we're going to clean it up, right? It's a way to undermine local leadership, local authority.
Well, talk about what happened to him in San Francisco when he pulled that shit.
What happened in San Francisco?
Well, when he went out to San Francisco, he decided to do a so-called cleanup, and people got ticked off at him because he wasn't just trying to go after the Democratic politicians. Now in San Francisco, he was trying to pit black communities, blacks and Latinos against each other, saying blacks before illegals and all this nonsense. The biggest problem that he had was, number one, people weren't putting up with that in San Francisco. And number two, his cleanup included basically throwing away the personal property of homeless folks.
That's fascism.
So they asked him to leave, effectively.
I mean, you want to talk to your relatives, right? I'm sure this isn't really a problem for a lot of us, people here associated with Revolution Radio, right? Because they'll say, well, I just want to hear what he has to say. He's slick. He's got a PhD. He's eloquent. He's not in a mask or whatever. Look, just stop and ask yourself, who is this person reaching out to, right? Like, you need to sit there and you need to ask yourself, like, stop and look. If you're at a rally, it doesn't matter what it is, stop and look at the people around you, right? So if I have a bunch of anti-capitalists and it's multicultural, I feel good about where I'm at. But if I see a bunch of white supremacists around me, people in Camp Auschwitz shirts, people with QAnon shirts, that's when I have to stop and say, oh, maybe I'm in the wrong place. Right? I mean, we have to stop it and ask ourselves, what is the goal? What do these people want? All they want to do is oppress.
Now, I wanted to let everybody know. No, you go on.
Well, yeah, I think it's important for people to understand that, what Daryle does and what we do on Revolution Radio or what we put on Facebook really doesn't influence the person that has the problem. So if you have somebody in your life that's into QAnon, these conspiracy theories, the Anti Vax movement, which is a real problem with Jamel Holly in the state of New Jersey. But no matter what, our actions and words are only to give real ammunition to the people who are close to that person. Because unless you have a real relationship with somebody, you can't influence them. The bottom line is on social media, calling somebody a clown for believing a certain conspiracy theory is fun for you doing it. And I encourage that kind of behavior because I think it empowers people who are having that personal conversation. So what Daryle and we do here on the IDAVOX Report is so important. But let's face it, we do a lot of preaching to the choir. And I think that unless you take these facts and these things home with you and talk to the people that respect you and who love you and who you love back and who you can influence, that's the real struggle when we're fighting these extreme ideologies. Because most of these people are mentally ill. Most of these people really have serious problems in life that aren't really related to the issues that they're projecting on our society. And that's got to be addressed through other means.
Yeah, I think to your point about preaching to the choir, I think that's one of the main reasons why you see me out there as much as you have, because I can't preach to the choir. We all know the problem. I need to be able to, I feel that we all need to be able to talk to people beyond us. We need to explain to folks exactly what it is that's going on out there. And I think my approach has been, I guess, a little effective. I mean, if I'm running around going Hollywood doing movies and showing up on Rachel Maddow and stuff like that, then apparently there is an audience that wants to hear what we have to say, So I really do encourage people, though, just really got to get outside that box. You got to go out there and say things and speak to people in a way that they'll get it, I saw somebody online, and it bothered me a little bit because he said he didn't care for me because he thought I was not anti-capitalist and not a militant. I don't know why the hell he's saying that, but the truth of the matter is I can get why. I mean, when I say I don't know why the hell he's saying that, I think I understand. I understand that I probably do carry a push off that ideal that because you see me in the public eye a lot in places where a lot of folks to the farther left of me would never go. Hell, I was on Jesse Lee Peterson's show, for God's sake. And that was just practice. That was just practice for me. But I think the important thing to remember is the reason why I do that is because I'm trying to reach out to some folks who we otherwise do not reach out to. And I think that's going to be more important. That's going to be important to in regards to how we continue to go forward. I think that sometimes the other side misunderstands exactly where I'm coming from when I do that. That doesn't mean I'm going to be friends with fascists and think that we are all working together against this government. No, this is a three-way fight, baby. Because I'm not here, when I have to, at the end of the day, whenever we are done fighting the government, when we prevail against that, who feels that power void, you or me? I still have to deal with the fact that you're a fascist. I still have to deal with the fact that you want that power. And I can't let you have that power. And we got to remember that that's the kind of fight that we have. We got to be careful of who it is we align ourselves with. And I say that because there's way too many times in recent days, in recent weeks even, where we are seeing folks getting caught up on our side, especially when you start looking at the anti-war scene and everything, where you see people getting caught up in trying to deal with the government, trying to deal with these this 20-year war, trying to deal with Democrats and Republicans, no matter where our elected officials come from, And we're making some alliances that we do have to be mindful of. This Magnus character who was in the Boogaloo movement, as I expressed, he wants to cause us harm. I mean, he supports Kyle Rittenhouse. He's not our friend, you know? And if we just, because he makes a big deal about how he can ingratiate himself to BLM, to Black Lives Matter. I don't know who from Black Lives Matter, but the truth of the matter is, whomever it is, we need to talk. We really need to talk. Because they also make a point about how they can't seem to do the same thing when it comes to Antifa, but go.
I wanted to ask, about the current situation, because all these groups that you just mentioned, they've taken a hit because their president lost. Let's face it, Donald Trump being out of office has had the effect of silencing some of these racist people who were emboldened by him. What are the formations taking place that you're worried about going forward? The Proud Boys seem to have gotten their ass pretty well kicked by the feds over the last couple of months.
They got a little bit of strength in Portland.
What are the formations that kind of like when you see them popping up on your radar that you concern yourself with because they may be growing despite the current political climate?
I would say, and again, I'm sorry, bro. I'm so sorry.
Pete,
but
that's Pete.
Pete. I didn't want to call him out like that. That's not fair. Because I'm going to eat Jimmy Dore alive again.
That's right.
I can come back at you, bud.
I'm sure.
Come on up. Let's come on up. Let's do this.
I mean, we got a special guest. Pete's coming back.
There you go.
No, it's just that Jimmy Dore is messing around with some very dangerous elements. When that Boogaloo bum showed up, Magnus to be exact, showed up on his show back in January, that raised the red flag. And he's been basically, it just seems like every time I turn around, it's like what somebody said about Jimmy Dore is they have never heard anything positive coming whenever you mention the name Jimmy Dore, because he continues to ingratiate himself with that particular crowd. But I don't want to just make it about Jimmy Dore. I mean, that's just an example that's coming up right now. Even more egregious is probably the Joe Rogans of the world. People keep trying to tell me I should talk to Joe Rogan. Third finger from the left on that one. They also say the same thing about Bill Maher. 2 third fingers from the left on that one, because when you start talking about somebody who is that anti-Muslim and that anti-democratic in many respects, that's not happening. Jimmy Dore is coming to mind right now because he's basically just a new guy I'm paying attention to. But I can understand the need to bring us together in left and right to try to get that meeting of the minds. Sure. But again, there are some deal breakers. There are some cold deal breakers. And fascism is the biggest one, especially with me. I mean, I make no bones about that. We got to remember that this country, I mean, who said it was this, the American Revolution was not a real revolution? Okay, you're right. Because and I think we brought this up before, about how the American Revolution was actually the brainchild of those poor farmers that were tilling the land, wondering why their money was going to a king 3,000 miles away, and it was co-opted by the so-called founding fathers, who then, after they won their revolution, X all those poor farmers out. If you didn't own land, you could not vote, you could not decide the ideas, the way this country is going in, and that's one of the things we have to prevent ourselves from falling into. I mean, we do not want to be the poor farmers. We want to make sure that whatever efforts that we make in our movement, in our struggles, in our campaigns, we control it and we keep it away from those who don't want to use it in the proper way, who don't want to be a part of it in the proper way. Do you want to come up?
Go ahead.
No. I spoke. But
We've been beating up Jimmy for a while, man. You can come on up if you want.
I put you on the spot, so it's only fair.
Come on up. Peter Jacob, everybody. Put it on the spot.
Peter.
Pete. Have a seat.
Back in action. Didn't expect
There you
to
go.
be back so soon on Revolution Radio.
For his second appearance. There you go.
I'll say this. I know what I referred to when I was talking about Jimmy Dore, for one, is the force to vote. campaign. I thought it was very powerful. That's the only thing that Congress could have done at the moment. But to speak to the Boogaloo Boy thing, you know, I don't agree with Jimmy on everything, but I think it was important to make that the video that he showed of that individual. What was his name again?
Actually, his real
Magnus.
name is Zachary
Right.
something.
He goes by Magnus, right?
Zachary Dawson.
So I don't think if you just heard that in and of itself, I don't think anybody on the left would disagree with what he was saying, how the corporations own government, and I think we all agree on that. I think it was an important way to extend his hand in the same way that, and I want your opinion on this, how Fred Hampton reached out to the Young Patriots who are far more.
Doing that. They keep bringing up Fred
Yeah,
Hampton.
because it's well, that's important.
Fred Hampton said a lot about fascism too.
Sure. So does Jimmy Dore, right? Jimmy Dore, you can't lump Jimmy Dore and say he's the same as Bill Maher and he's Islamophobic and stuff like that. That's not a fair assessment for Jimmy Dore, right? To put them into the same pool of things. But I think what Jimmy was doing is some of that similar spirit of work that's been missing completely, is to extend your arm to those people that you can change. We were just talking about, look, we're in our silos. We need to reach out on the common issues. And that is what the establishment is most scared of. The working class coming together. What the media rather do is separate all of us on identity politics.
Okay, the thing about Fred Hampton, you got to remember, is that Fred Hampton was dealing with a time that those same white activists that he was working with were the ones really had a lot more power than they did back in the day. He had to reach out to those poor white activists and find that common ground. He couldn't find common ground with all of them. That's it. You got to remember that. And when he did, and look what happened to them. They changed. He didn't go their way. They went his. Those particular ones. And yes, that is something that we need to do. We need to try to reach out to those who will change. But you also have to be mindful of the fact of those that won't. And if you are dealing with people who are still going to remain fascist as you are working with them, you're not working with them. They are working against you. And that's where I'm concerned.
And I think I don't think there's larger effort beyond this, because it is a dangerous type of situation for anybody to walk into a room, especially a person of color or whoever it may be, or even a liberal, to walk into a room and say, hey, let's have a conversation. I think we need to create those platforms. But I think that was a foot in the door to make it happen. No pun intended with the name.
Well, let me tell you something. I have put my feet in the door many a time. I mean, there's videos of me arguing with the Proud Boys and trying to decide that. But it's also a case of recognizing who it is you're dealing with. You know, I mean, I think that one of the things that everybody likes to talk to me about is how I help Nazis get out of that white power scene. You know what happens though? They have to come to me. That's something that my father had taught me. I mean, he was a drug counselor. And his thing was, he'll help you out, he'll help you get clean, but you gotta want to get clean. You know? You can't chase after these guys. I mean, it's good to reach out. I'm not going to discount that. But the question is, are you reaching out to make them change, or are you helping them along? Are you platforming them? This is where the questions come. If you're not,
so what do you think his intent is? To push them?
He's platforming them.
Or is it to change them?
He's not trying to. I don't think he's ever pushed back on anything they ever said. That's what the problem is.
He did push back.
Yeah, if you watch those interviews, it was very uncritical. And I think that's, there's a difference between reaching out to people. And I talked about changing hearts and minds. It's important that we talk to people in every aspect of society. But like Daryle said, there's a difference between platforming an idea and challenging it. And when I watched those interviews, I didn't see Jimmy challenge him at all. And even, let's give Jimmy the benefit of the doubt in saying he was naive, didn't do his research enough, and put on a bad guess. even after the fact, he really dug in his heels and stuck with his line that, it was okay to have this guy on rather than, backtrack. He could have backtracked even a little bit and said, maybe I should have done it better, but he never even did that. And I think that's why, on the IDAVOX report, and we've been continuing to be critical of him because I really haven't seen any contrition on his part, to be honest with you.
Sure, yeah. I don't know if he should bring him back on.
He shouldn't.
No, what I'm saying, I did see some, it was limited. I think he was also trying to get a grasp of where he's at with this guy, right? He saw also, like, when you're having these conversations, you don't want to push them so far away to the point that they no longer want to be at the table, right?
That's on them.
Well, even like, look, I'm a social worker as well. When people are in recovery, you don't want to be like, oh yeah, you fucked up, bro. Get out of here. No, you see,
you
relapse
don't.
Relapse is a part of recovery.
That doesn't work.
Yeah, but it does go back. It does go back, and I forgot you said you was a social worker because you know that there's only but so much you can do before you realize that they got to hit rock bottom.
Yeah, I think also, like, the more exposure you have to people and ideas, the more likely you are to change. Like, I've met people, like, I went to grad school in Missouri, and they've never met a brown-skinned man in their life. So for the first time, you're not like what they say. Like, there is a Muhammad somewhere in the deep south that's running a pharmacy. Muhammad's overseas may be terrorists, but Muhammad took care of Aunt Nancy when she was sick. He's a good guy. So the more they get exposed to not just the person, but the ideas, that's what happened with the Young Patriots. And that's, I think, we could build that potential, but I don't know how it's done exactly.
It's actually, in many respects, it is actually easier than we may be letting on now. But the truth of the matter is, it's a matter of what it is we are going to tolerate in our approach to things. Like I said, I've helped people get out of that white person. They did an entire movie about that with me, and and whenever I go and speak on that movie, I tell them, hey, look, there are some people that brother left behind that I can't talk to that want me dead.
Absolutely.
And so it's always a case of, even when they are out, this is the other thing, and this is the same with addictions, and my father will tell you that too. There's a point, even with that, there's a place where you have to prove yourself. You have to atone for a lot of the things that you might have even done. There are people who are never going to forgive you for what you were about, or more to the point, never going to trust you. Listen, I didn't mean to, like I said, I did not mean to put you on the spot.
No, it's not personal. We're
I did
having
not
a
mean to put you
dialogue.
on the spot. It
This
ain't
is
like
like- this
it
is
ain't like I'm gonna
Socrates,
tell. It ain't like I'm
Plato
gonna cancel you. Although I am a proponent of cancel culture. Yes, I am.
We cancel Nazis.
Yes. I just canceled Scott Ressler. But it's just that this is a conversation that we do have to have, because we do need to talk about how we go forward as we are dealing with folks who are coming our way. If they're coming our way, they need to come our way, not the other way around. We can plant the seeds. They're the ones that need to water.
Amen to that. I agree with that. Honor to be on this dialogue with you.
There you go. There we go. We can create peace here. We can create peace anywhere.
Well, there wasn't
We can
a
do it.
war. It was just a standard disagreement.
We're just split hairs. We're all on the same page.
I think it was good to have another perspective on the show because it's the dialogue that you're going to have in personal conversations.
I was at his wedding, by the way.
See, we can't fight.
What a lucky
goyle.
goyle.
I do want to point out to folks, I brought up Scott Pressler, and I do want to let people know, for those who don't live in the New Jersey area, you can shut him down too if you like. If you're in Pittsburgh on the 2nd of July, he is going to be in Allison Park, and there's some people that are going to be opposing him there. Also, he's going to be in Fredericksburg, Virginia on June 29th, Bluffton, South Carolina on July 9th, Charleston, South Carolina on the 11th of July, 12th of July, Myrtle Beach, 13th, Putnam County, Florida, 17th, Jacksonville, Florida, home of Leonard Skinner, The 23rd, South Dakota. I'm a Leonard Skinner fan. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, that's a whole show.
Oh no. No. I actually like. No. Have you ever heard them brothers play?
I've seen them live. I've seen them live.
You prefer Lonnie or Ronnie? Who's the better singer?
Lonnie.
They both named Ronnie or Lonnie?
No, Johnny Van Zant's
Johnny,
guy
isn't there
singing
Ronnie
now.
and Johnny?
Ronnie was the one that got killed in the plane
So it's
crash.
Ronnie and Johnny.
The
not
lineup
Ronnie.
that
That's how much I
everybody
know
knows
about it.
is Ronnie Van Zant, Steve Gaines, Alan Collins, Billy Powell, who was badass on those keys. Artemis Pyle, and Gary Rossington, and Ed King, who was a badass on that guitar.
I gotta
Gary
ask him a
Rossington's-
question. I gotta
Rush while we're at it.
I gotta ask a question. I gotta ask a question. Well, that's what I'm getting at. Of course, this is what I'm gonna ask you.
They finally said later for that.
Dude, I've never seen a Leonard Skinner thing without a Confederate
You will
flag.
now. You will now.
And for Daryle Lamont Jenkins to tell me he's a Leonard Skinner fan, my brain just melted and fell out of both my
I was stationed in Virginia. There it is. My basic training was in Texas.
The world is, no pun
Something
intended.
seeped into the system.
These are the areas of gray I was talking about earlier.
I mean,
right?
three
It's
guitars,
not-
man. That was the first place I ever saw that. I mean, Sweet Home
You told me
Alabama
Pantera.
is
You liked
something,
Pantera
but,
the other
you
day
know,
too. You told me you liked Pantera the other day too.
Hey, Vinny, the drummer, actually produced one of my boys' bands.
It was just Phil.
Yeah, Phil was a POS. I mean, I'm not going to take that back. I'm not going to
Quite a bit.
deny that. I mean, but South Dakota the 23rd, Lincoln, Nebraska the 24th, Omaha, Nebraska the 25th, Kearney, Nebraska the 26th, Albuquerque, New Mexico the 31st. That's Scott Pressler. And Darius Mayfield is trying to do his cleanups coming up in Plainfield, the fake cleanups, mind you, where he brings QAnon to Plainfield, Trenton. I got the dates, but I don't have them here with me right now. I can't find them.
We'll post them.
But they're up on his Facebook page that he'll probably block me from once he realizes we're talking about him. But it doesn't matter because I know how to get past that. So that's his plans. So we do have to fight these characters, and that's what One People's Project does. Which is why in the 20 minutes that we have left. Wait, there's a
8:45.
8:45?
8:45.
We got to stop at 8:45?
Yeah. The
Okay.
staff gotta go home, man.
Okay, staff got to go home. Yeah, that's right. I keep forgetting about that. So let me make this quick. For
Plus, I gotta
those
sell
who are
people
in
shit.
the room right now, there's people over there have T-shirts, buttons, bumper stickers, hats.
Hash?
And beautiful stuff. There's some flyers that you can pick up for free, so some stickers. And if anybody who's listening wants to get any of that, just go to onepeoplesproject.com/merch. If you'd like to donate to One People's Project, please do so. We're a 501c3, and that's onepeoplesproject.com/donate. And this was fun.
It was.
I can go on forever. I never really need a guest, although
Really
the special guest, impromptu special guest, was great.
Absolutely love Peter. Real quick, I just want to give a shout out to Warren. Warren's our most interactive fan out there, and I guess on the web, right? Warren, how you doing, Warren? He couldn't make it out here tonight, but shout out to Warren, always commenting. And again, please, if you could just get it. We like to be interactive, ask questions. Comment on our program. We're trying to grow here. So feel free.
We are growing, and we are growing, and I want to thank everybody. Let's get a round of applause for everything that went on tonight because it was just awesome. One more, Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
I gotta do that one more. That was probably my favorite part of the evening. But like I said, this was one long video, but over the next week, you're going to see these segments come out on www.njrevolutionradio.com. Find us on YouTube. For those of you in the audience, there's a flyer going around with a QR code that you can scan and check out our YouTube channel. But if you're at home, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us on Spotify and Google Play, iTunes, all the major podcast outlets. And every time somebody clicks subscribe, it helps grow our audience and helps us reach more people. Just coming out of like a 2-year hiatus on live events to have a crowd turn out like this tonight is pretty good. So thank you very much. I do want to do this again. I want to do this with more people. I'm going to come back to New Jersey as frequently as possible. This is my home state, and although I live a few hundred miles away now, my heart will always be here in New Jersey with my comrades. So there you go. When I come back, I'm going to need your help to let comrades know that Revolution Radio is back. We're doing live shows. And one more time, join our editorial board if you really want to start making your own productions. We have people working behind the scenes every day now, and that means less responsibility for me personally, but it also means a bigger and better independent media. We do not get money, nor will we ever get money from Walmart or Amazon or these major corporate interests. No Soros checks are coming in. That dude owes me millions, but it's not coming anytime soon. So I'm not looking for just straight donations. I'm looking for participation. I'm looking for people to create media. The ideas that have come out this year would never have come out of my head alone. I had to surround myself with great comrades, and I've done that. There's hundreds of you now. So thank you very much for chipping in. Are we doing a show next week? You going to do a show next week? You going to take off? Kristen's going to do a show next week. I'm probably going to take off. Daryle, you doing a show next week? You're going to be, what's your schedule?
Yeah, we're going to be doing a show next week.
We got
a couple of shows before we call it a hiatus, call it a month, because at the end of July, we're going to be chilling out and taking a break and trying to get things situated. Because it kind of like IDAVOX Report just came out of nowhere, really. We decided they wanted to do New Jersey Revolution Radio wanted to do a thing with IDAVOX, and we did it for a couple of weeks and said, you know what, why don't we just have a full-on show? Yeah. So this is kind of like flying by the seat of our pants. We're going to be, so we want to be professionals as we go forward and then figure out what the heck we're going to be doing in the future. And we're going to be doing a lot more on-location stuff. And we're going to cause a lot more grief out there with your help.
The IDAVOX Report has, like I said at the beginning, just made Revolution Radio so much bigger and better. And so thanks, Daryle, for your personal commitment over the decades of activism. Way before I met you, this started. So thanks for tying your wagon to this horse. And it's moving forward pretty well. Again, thanks a lot, everybody. I'll be back. We're going to take some breaks over the summer. Certainly it's hot. Go dip in the pool. Enjoy time with your family. If you got kids, there's a difference between being home with your kids and spending time with your kids. So recognize that difference if you have children, and spend some time with them this summer. Until, next time, this is Brian Powers. And I do want to remind all of you that the police can quit their jobs. Good night, everybody.
Thrown against the car, handcuffed, and that's what happened last night.
The police kicked in the door, shot him twice in the chest, and died.
Before you knew it, we had 500 families. We had over 100 volunteers calling us. We were on the phone constantly.
And I can't get, and I got one police department telling me they don't know who's in charge. I got another police department here. Everybody's got a gun, and nobody knows who's in charge. Did anybody figure out who's in charge yet? Is there anybody in charge here? Any police officer in charge? Are you in charge? I can't find anybody in charge. That's the problem.